How's it going there, folks? Welcome to the beginning of the spooky season with another fun at-home table reading tonight. We're jumping into an unknown mini-series, which is a rare thing for us here. We're doing Return of the Thing. This was originally supposed to be a Frank Darabont Sci-Fi Channel thing. I love the original movie. I've never had a chance to read this one, so we're going to jump into it tonight. And let's get ourselves going. I am Logan. I'm going to be on action description.
And I'm Travis. I'm playing Prichard.
Lovely.
I'm Angi and I'm Alina.
I'm George and I'll be Avery.
Hi, I'm Anne and I will be a Blackburn.
And I'm Nicole and I'll be Lukanov.
All right. Well, away we go. Return of the Thing, Part 1, Exposure, written by David Leslie Johnson. Fade in, black, the sounds of a roaring fire, a title, Antarctica, winter 1982. Exterior Antarctica, U.S. Station Number 4, night. We open with footage from the Carpenter movie, The Last Scene. Flames are consuming the remains of a scientific outpost. A man enters frame, wrapped in a blanket, clutching a bottle of J&B, beard crusted with ice, sombrero tied around his neck. We know this guy. It's Macready. He staggers towards us, sits down heavily, starts to raise the bottle to his lips, then stops. Another figure appears behind him, black, bald, and bundled in a parka, clutching a flamethrower. This is Childs. Macready seems startled to see him. Not startled, afraid.
You're the only one who made it?
I'm not the only one.
Did you kill it?
Where were you, Childs?
Thought I saw Blair. I went out after him, got lost in the storm.
Childs sits down across from him. A long beat.
Fire's got the temperature up all over the camp. Won't last long, though.
Neither will we.
How will we make it?
Maybe we shouldn't.
You're worried about me.
If we've got any surprises for each other, I don't think we're in much shape to do anything about it.
Well, what do we do?
Why don't we just wait here for a little while? See what happens. He offers Childs the bottle. Childs takes it and drinks, chuckling weakly as the camp burns around them. Fade to black. The crackling of the burning camp slowly fades, leaving only the sound of a mournful wind howling over the frozen desert. Exterior, 6 months later. Exterior Antarctica, U.S. Station Number 4, day. Macready and Childs are still sitting across from one another, half buried in the snow. Dead. Frozen solid. The bottle of J&B still clutched in Macready's gloved hand. Macready's eyes are open, crusted with ice crystals, his cheek black with frostbite. Behind the two dead men, the remains of the camp are covered in ice and snow. It's a lonely tableau, bleak and haunting. Then we begin to hear voices. They're shouting in Russian. In the background, two men in parkas run into frame. One of them pops a smoke grenade and tosses it out onto the ice. Suddenly, a Soviet Mi-8T helicopter roars by overhead, circling the camp. A red star and the letters CCCP are painted on its side. Interior Soviet helicopter day. Dr. Yuri Lukanov looks out the window at the ice. He's in his early 40s with hawkish features and piercing dark eyes. Next to him, his wife, Alina. She is his age, warm but very dignified. The third passenger is Fedyenka Vigovsky. He's a sharp kid in his 20s, long on enthusiasm, short on personal hygiene. A pilot and co-pilot are at the controls. They all speak in subtitled Russian. Alina taps Lukanov on the shoulder. He leans towards her, but she still has to shout to be heard over the sound of the rotors.
Rook to H4.
Lukanov gives her a thoughtful look, then nods and turns back to the window. The co-pilot gestures to Vigovsky.
What's that all about?
They're playing chess
Where's the board?
in their heads.
The co-pilot gives Alina and Lukanov an incredulous look. Exterior Antarctica, U.S. Station Number 4, day. The helicopter lands. Anxiously waiting at the edge of the landing zone is Dr. Kadakin, a burly, bearded man mid-40s. He waves to Lukanov and the others as they disembark.
Dr. Lukanov? Shoss.
Kadakin leads Lukanov, Alina, and Vigovsky at a stride through the ruined camp. Men in parkas are busily placing survey flags and searching the wreckage. Caterpillar tractors are clearing paths through the snow. There's a major excavation underway.
When will the Americans and the Norwegians be notified? When we are done. And not one moment sooner. Is that understood? Yes, comrade doctor. Quite understood.
Are there no survivors?
Only bodies. Most are burnt beyond recognition. And some are not.
They arrive at the shack where Macready and Childs sit frozen in the snow. Lukanov kneels and examines the corpses. Vigovsky starts taking photographs.
This is how you found them? We haven't touched anything.
Alina notices something, and Lukanov follows her look. Childs is still clutching the flamethrower, its nozzle pointed at Macready. A thoughtful beat. Lukanov brushes the snow away from Macready's other hand, revealing a .357 Magnum, aimed at Childs.
They sat here, pointing guns at each other, until they froze to death.
Curious. You think this is curious? This is nothing.
A beat. Lukanov tries to contain an excited smile, but can't. Exterior Antarctica, glacier day. 3 Soviet helicopters roar over the desolate ice fields, the fat MIL-MIAT now flanked by 2 vicious-looking Hind 8s, 3 dark green wasps streaking across the eye-searing white terrain. Interior Soviet helicopter day. Lukanov sits with Alina, Vigovsky, and Kadakin. There are half a dozen Soviet commandos with them this time. One of the commandos slaps a magazine into his AK-47 and pulls the bolt back. Ka-check. Vigovsky eyes him nervously. Alina reaches out and holds Lukanov's hand. He raises her hand and kisses it lovingly, but we can see that his mind is racing. Exterior Antarctica, crater base day. The helicopter set down on a flat expanse of ice. Lukanov and the others get out, escorted by the commandos. The Soviets have set up a makeshift camp here around a giant circular hole in the ground. Armed soldiers guard the perimeter. Kadakin leads them to the edge. What they see at the bottom of the huge crater takes their breath away.
Oh my god.
It's a spaceship. The same intense flying saucer from the Carpenter movie, still at the bottom of that hole in the ice. The winter storms have nearly covered it, but we can still make out its shape. Jagged edges of torn metal poke through the snow.
Have you been inside? We've been waiting for you to tell us if it's safe.
Vigovsky gives Lukanov an uneasy look, but Lukanov seems unfazed. He nods to the others.
Suit up.
Exterior Antarctica, crater base day, time cut. The commandos lead Lukanov, Alina, and Vigovsky down to a flying saucer via steps carved in the ice. They're all wearing sophisticated hazmat suits over their cold weather gear. They look like astronauts preparing to walk on the moon. Lukanov and the others set foot atop the spaceship and walk across its hull, snow crunching under their boots. Alina gapes in wonder around, and Vigovsky videotapes everything with a bulky camcorder. Handheld camcorder POV. Following Lukanov and the others, Vigovsky pans up as they walk under a huge looming metal strut torn from the superstructure. Back to scene. There's a large snow-encrusted disc jutting out of a hull in front of him. Camera moves in and tilts down to reveal that it's an open hatch cover. A circular hole lined with icicles leads to the ship's interior. Lukanov looks down, but only sees darkness.
What do you think?
Knight to H4. Knight takes rook.
Interior spaceship day. Pitch black, looking through the hatch, a circle of light in the darkness. The commandos toss ropes into the hole and start rappelling towards us, one after another, a plummeting body finally wiping us to black. Silence. Then suddenly the screen is ripped apart as our title burns and fizzles its way through. Return of the Thing. Fade to black. We hear a droning of jet engines in flight. Title, 23 years later. Interior Boeing 767 night. Camera moves very slowly down the aisle. The cabin is dimmed. Most of the passengers are asleep. Title, Transglobal Airways Flight 321, nonstop from Moscow to Los Angeles. The camera finds a nervous passenger sitting at the window. He raises a trembling hand and presses the call button. A flight attendant appears in the aisle. The nervous man speaks with an unusual accent. How long till we land? About 6 hours, about half an hour less than the last time you asked. She smiles, but her joke does nothing to reassure him. He's really tense. She gives him a sympathetic look. Try to get some sleep. He nods and she leaves. He adjusts his pillow and turns towards the window, staring blankly at his reflection. The flight attendant returns to the mid-cabin station. Another flight attendant gives her a concerned look.
What's that guy's problem?
Just squirrely, I think, but let's keep an eye on him just in case. Exterior, Kremlin, day. The sky is heavy with storm clouds and snow covers the ground. Title, Moscow. Interior, House of Government, day. Lukanov paces impatiently on an ornate corridor outside a pair of large wooden doors. He's in his 60s now, still a formidable presence, but something is different about him. His manner is urgent, almost manic, and his eyes now seem distant and haunted. The wooden doors open and a grim-faced Russian bureaucrat emerges. They speak in subtitled Russian.
It's been confirmed. Vitsenko bribed his way onto a flight bound for Los Angeles 10 hours ago.
You have to warn the Americans. If that plane lands, it will be the same as you launched a nuclear attack against them.
The president agrees. He's making the call now.
It's not enough. They won't understand what they're up against.
They're arranging to fly you to Los Angeles to help them, but you must stick to the cover story we have provided. We have interests that need to be protected.
Your only interest should be in stopping this from reaching the general population. You've seen the projections. You see how quickly it could spread if...
Yes, I know. That's why we're sending you. But I also know that it's difficult for you to be purely objective in this matter.
Lukanov glares at him, but before he can respond, 2 FSB agents in trench coats appear behind him. The bureaucrat turns to them.
Take Dr. Lukanov to Chalovsky Airport. See that he is not late.
2 agents nod and gesture for Lukanov to follow him. Lukanov gives them a suspicious look.
We want this ended just as badly as you do. Surely you can do that without making too much trouble.
Lukanov eyes the bureaucrat warily, then follows the FSB men to lead him away. The bureaucrat watches him go. Exterior, Washington, D.C., establishing night. Aerial shots of the nation's capital. Suddenly, a military helicopter roars into frame, heading across the city. Interior, Prichard's home, bedroom, night. A telephone rings. The clock next to it on the nightstand reads 4:24 a.m. Roger Prichard stirs in bed. 40s, clean cut, but a bit weak-chinned and weaselly. He puts on his glasses as he reaches for the phone and picks up a pen, ready to take notes.
This is Prichard. Yeah. Is this for real? What helicopter?
Suddenly he hears a sound outside. Pop, 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 pop. And through his bedroom window, Prichard sees the helicopter that we just saw land on his lawn. He gives it a stunned look. A beat.
Okay, I'll be there in 15 minutes. Call me on my cell.
Interior, Homeland Security HQ, morning. A seal etched in a glass door reads Department of Homeland Security. The door opens and Prichard enters with DHS Secretary Pete Avery, a barrel-chested man in his 50s. Prichard hands Avery a file and points to a surveillance photo of Ivan Vitsenko, the nervous flyer on Flight 321.
His name is Ivan Vincenko. The Russians say he's part of a Chechen extremist group that blew up 3 Moscow apartment buildings 6 years ago.
And how the hell they let this asshole get on a plane?
Oh, come on. Russian security is an oxymoron. We're luckily they figured out what was happening before he landed.
Call this lucky?
Prichard is disturbed by Avery's response. They pause at the security door to swipe their ID cards. Prichard lowers his voice so no one overhears.
Pete, what's this guy carrying?
Weaponized smallpox.
Prichard gives him a stricken look. The security door buzzes open and they walk through into Interior Homeland Security HQ Situation Room, morning. The room quietly buzzes with officials and technicians, some in military uniforms. Video monitors line the walls. Prichard quickly grabs a phone. Avery turns to a horrified Aide.
How long until they enter our airspace?
They already have. 3 hours ago.
Nice of old Vlad to give us the heads up. So where are they?
Over New Mexico. The pilot's been ordered to enter a holding pattern until their escort arrives.
Avery looks at one of the tactical screens and points to 4 red blips. They're rapidly closing on a flashing blue arrow.
These are boys out of cannon?
Yes, sir. 4 F-16s from the 27th Fighter Wing.
Richard hangs up the phone and turns to Avery.
Pete, and Blackburn is from the CDC.
He points to one of the room's video walls where a jerky webcam image suddenly appears. It's Dr. Anne Blackburn, 30s, sharp, attractive. She's video conferencing from home and wearing a frumpy sweatshirt. She's obviously just woken up.
Hi, Anne. Sorry to wake you. Have you been able to get a handle on what we might be looking at?
Do we know if the virus was released before he got the plane?
We don't think so, but the Russians are shutting down Sheremetyevo Airport until we're sure. What we need to know now is what to expect here when this plane lands.
Well, the variola major strain has a fatality rate of about 30%. But if we're talking about a weaponized virus, that number could go all the way up to 100%. And there's no guarantee that the current vaccine will even touch it.
We have 243 passengers and crew. How many do you think could be infected?
Until we find out more about this strain, there's really no way to know. Are we in contact with the Russians on this?
They promised full cooperation. In fact, they're sending us some kind of expert.
Aide holds up a telephone and gestures to Avery.
Mr. Secretary, I have the president. He's asking for your recommendation.
Dr. Blackburn, will you excuse us?
Before she can respond, Avery punches the mute button on the conference phone. Blackburn's angle vanishes from the screen.
I say we stick to the plan. We can have them diverted to Cannon AFB in under an hour. It'll be a hell of a lot easier to control this situation there than it will be at LAX.
What if they're hijacked? We don't know that Visenko is the only terrorist on that plane. What if they refuse to comply?
We're not going to let a plane full of weaponized smallpox decide where it wants to land. We'll shoot them down if we have to.
Prichard doesn't answer. Avery takes the phone from the aide.
President?
Exterior Boeing 767 night. Flight 321 soars over the New Mexico desert. Angle widened to reveal 4 F-16s moving into formation around it. Interior Boeing 767 night. Ivan Vitsenko, the nervous passenger, is still sweating and fidgeting anxiously. A man across the aisle spots something out of the window and points it out to a woman sitting next to him. Vitsenko eyes them curiously and looks out the window. Just then, the intercom crackles and the captain addresses the cabin.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the captain speaking. Some of you may have already noticed our friendly chaperones.
Vitsenko urgently looks out his window, craning his neck until he spots the running lights of one of the F-16s.
There's no cause for concern, but we will be making an unscheduled landing at Cannon Air Force Base.
He drones on, but Vitsenko isn't hearing him anymore. He sits back in his seat, eyes darting, breathing hard. He tugs at his collar and staggers into the aisle. Flight attendant number 1 sees him. Sir, are you all right? Vitsenko tries to answer, sputtering incoherently. Suddenly, his body goes rigid and he collapses into the aisle. Flight attendant 1 rushes to his side. Flight attendant 2 helps her. He's not breathing. I think he's having a heart attack. Flight attendant 2 hurries to the mid-cabin station and grabs the emergency defibrillator. Passengers poke their head up to see what's going on. Flight attendant 1 unbuttons Vitsenko's shirt and begins mouth-to-mouth, checks his pulse. Nothing. Flight attendant 2 returns with a defibrillator. They quickly prepare the paddles and attach EKG monitor leads to Vitsenko's chest. Flight attendant 1 turns the defibrillator on. The machine whines as it builds up a charge. Then, beep, beep, beep. Everybody stay back. She presses the paddles against his chest. Zap. Vitsenko's body lurches, then goes limp. The flight attendant checks the EKG. No response. Again. The high-pitched whine fills the cabin again. Beep, beep, beep. Clear! Zap. Still no response. Another flight attendant hurries to the mid-cabin station and grabs the interphone.
Captain, we got a problem back here.
In the aisle, the defibrillator charges. Beep, beep, beep. Clear! She lowers the paddles once more. Interior, Boeing 767 cockpit night. And suddenly, from the closed cockpit door, screams can be heard coming from the cabin. Screams and something else. A howl and an otherworldly hissing rattle, like the chirping of a swarm of alien crickets. The flight crew exchanges the alarmed looks. Interior, Homeland Security HQ, Situation Room, morning. Prichard and Avery stop what they're doing and turn as they hear the captain's voice crackling over the speakers.
Stand by. We've got a disturbance of some kind in the cabin.
Interior, Boeing 767 cockpit night. The screams from the cabin are panicked, hysterical, and the chirping sound is getting louder. The navigator goes up and peers through the peephole into the cockpit door. Suddenly, the steel door explodes in his face. The chittering sound is deafening, and the navigator is yanked out through the splintered hatch before he can even see what's gotten a hold of him. Interior, Homeland Security Headquarters, Situation Room, morning. The tense silence falls over the room. Prichard and Avery stand frozen, listening to the transmission from the air traffic controller.
Transglobal 321, this is Canon AFB. How do you read? Transglobal 321, how do you read?
No response. The aide turns to him, his face ashen.
Their hijack alarm has been activated.
Prichard sighs. He and Avery exchange a solemn look. Interior, exterior, F-16 cockpit, night. The fighter pilot behind the F-16 gets an order over the radio.
Stringer 1, this is Echelon. You are clear to engage.
Repeat that last echelon.
Your orders are confirmed, Stringer 1. You are clear to engage. Knock it down. God have mercy on us.
Copy that echelon.
Pilot hesitates, then maneuvers his plane into position. He aims the target box of his HUD at the 767. The missile lock tone fills the cockpit. A beat.
We read missile lock, Stringer 1. You are ordered to take the shot.
Pilot takes a deep breath, his gloved thumb hovering over the red fire button. Then suddenly, without a shot being fired, Flight 321 tips over at one wing and drops out of the sky.
Oh my God.
Stringer 1, what's going on up there? Can you confirm shoot down?
A negative. They just fell out of the sky. Repeat, no missile shot.
Exterior, Boeing 767, night. The plane roars by the camera, wings wobbling, the echo of a spaceship crash from the Carpenter film. Exterior, desert, dawn. The sun is barely beginning to burn on the horizon, silhouetting the dark mess. The desert is haunting and otherworldly. Exterior, Little Bear's Ranch, dawn. Calling it a ranch may be something of an overstatement. It's essentially a shack with a ramshackle wire fence and half a dozen sheep behind it. It's also a hut made of earth and wood. We begin to hear a screaming whine get louder and closer. Frank Little Bear emerges from the shack to see what it is. He's a Navajo in his 40s, his clothes reflecting a mixture of modern and the traditional. He's a man with a foot in two worlds. Little Bear steps outside just in time to see the Boeing 767 streak over his farm and pass behind the distant ridge. It vanishes from sight, then kaboom! An orange ball of fire erupts from the other side of the ridge, lighting the sky like a second sun. Interior Homeland Security HQ, Situation Room, morning. On the tactical screen, blue arrows blink, then vanish. A heavy silence falls over the room, shocked faces all around. Prichard gives Avery a troubled look, but Avery turns away. Dissolve 2, exterior crash site, dawn. Camera moves slowly through the flaming wreckage, past the debris field and a low hillock, where starving coyote appears. It looks around, sniffs the acrid air, and decides to investigate. The coyote tentatively pokes around the edge of the crash site, shying away from the crackling fires. It finds a smashed galley cart and hungrily laps up the food that's strewn around it. Then something else grabs its attention, an unearthly rattling chirp coming from underneath a piece of the metal wreckage. It's dark under there, and we can just make out a charred, fleshy mass glistening in the light of the fires. The coyote whines uncertainly, then sniffs and cautiously steps toward it. As the coyote nears, the mass splits open, flesh peeling back with a strange grace like a blossoming flower. The coyote stops, hackles raised, a low growl rising in its throat. Suddenly, a long tendril shoots out of the flesh flower and stabs the coyote in the throat. The coyote yips and tries to pull away, but another tendril whips out and grabs it by the neck. The flesh flower sprays the coyote with a weird milky fluid. The coyote whines and struggles, but can't escape the tendril, slowly pulling it towards the hidden mass. Camera pans away to a nearby ridge, where Frank Little Bear stands next to his old Willie's pickup truck, watching in shock as the coyote is dragged under a piece of metal debris. Camera moves in on Little Bear's horrified face, looking down at the nightmare transpiring below. The coyote whine stops. A long, silent beat. Then suddenly, the coyote trots out from under the debris, right as rain, as if nothing has happened. It stops and looks up at Little Bear. For a moment, it just stares at him. Little Bear is taken aback. Then the coyote turns away and lopes off into the desert. Little Bear watches it go. Off his astonished look, fade to black, end of Act 1. Act 2. Fade in. Exterior, Tchaikovsky Airport, dusk. Title, Tchaikovsky Military Airport, 19 miles northeast of Moscow. A dark sedan arrives across the tarmac, escorted by 2 police cars with lights flashing. They pull up in front of a large private jet. Lukanov gets out of the sedan, a carry-on bag slung over his shoulder. The FSB agents get out with him. They're greeted by Petrovsky, a tall, sallow chap who looks like he might get his ass kicked for tripping little old ladies. They speak in subtitled Russian.
Who are you?
Petrovsky, Federal Security Service.
I don't need a handler.
I'm not here to babysit you. I'm here in charge of this mission. You say nothing to the Americans without clearing it through me first. Is that understood?
Lukanov glowers angrily, then gives an irritated sigh and boards the airplane, followed by Petrovsky and the FSB agents. Exterior, Centers for Disease Control Day. A marble bust of Hygeia, the Greek goddess of health, stands at the front of a pale brick building. Title: Center for Disease Control and Prevention, Atlanta. An interior, and Blackburn's office day. Blackburn is at her desk talking on the phone. Marissa, her assistant, enters and hands her a message.
Okay, we've got a level 4 mobile lab prepped and loaded for you.
Intercut, interior, limousine day. Prichard and Avery sit at the back of a car, which is being escorted by police motorcycles. It's raining outside. They've got Blackburn on speakerphone.
Yeah, the bad news, it's in Denver. If you want it at the crash site before tomorrow morning, I need 2 C-130s to airlift it.
Done. Anything you need, have Colorado Air National Guard pick it up.
Any word yet on this guy the Russians are sending?
All we know is he's some kind of expert. They've got him on a plane now.
We assume he's your opposite number in Russian, Dr. Yuri Lukanov.
Blackburn quickly jots the name down.
What about your team?
Yeah, we've got 6 EIS officers already on their way.
Good. Email everyone's names for clearance to the crash site.
We're going to need a very strict quarantine. I'd suggest shutting down all roads and highways within a 20-mile radius.
You sure that's absolutely necessary?
Best way to keep the press out, that's for sure.
It's just a precaution.
Starting a panic isn't going to make my job any easier.
Nobody wants a panic. Excuse me. But if this turns out to be our nightmare scenario, we want to stomp this out with both feet now before it turns into an epidemic.
All right. Do what you have to do. We'll call you back as soon as we have secure communications with the Russian expert.
End intercut. Continuing in moving limo, Avery hangs up the speakerphone. Prichard shows him a map of New Mexico on a laptop computer.
The plane went down here, southwest of Four Corners. There's an abandoned military base we can use as a staging area about 15 miles from the crash site.
How long until we have someone out there?
County first responders will be there on the scene in about 30 minutes, but our bio-containment teams can't make it in less than 8 hours.
Just make sure the state police know to set up a wide perimeter. I want a total media blackout until we've got this thing under control.
How are we going to explain that?
As long as no one uses the word smallpox, I don't care what you tell them. And if I see a guy in a hazmat suit on the news tonight, someone's going to get their ass whooped.
When are we briefing the president?
We're not briefing the president. You're going to New Mexico.
You mean physically to New Mexico?
I'm not talking about astral projection.
FEMA can handle this. We can coordinate the...
I want a Homeland Security face on the ground in New Mexico. My way of reminding everybody who they work for.
Avery gives him a friendly wink. Prichard turns away and looks out at the rain-streaked window to hide his anger. Interior, Little Bear's house, dawn. It's little more than a low-ceilinged shack, meticulously neat and sparsely decorated. There's no TV, but he's got an old turntable and a collection of classic rock albums. Little Bear enters. It takes something out of a drawer by his bed. It's a Naha necklace, a crescent-shaped amulet hanging from a leather thong strung with turquoise beads, dried berries, and buffalo teeth. Little Bear regards it solemnly for a moment before slipping it around his neck. Then he grabs a hunting rifle, slings a canteen over his shoulder, puts his cowboy hat back on, and takes off again. Exterior, highway, dawn. The sun rises, turning the landscape blood red. A county utility truck pulls to the side of an endless ribbon of empty highway. The driver gets out of the truck. He's a country power worker, 30s, a tough-looking hombre with sideburns, goatee, and a mustache. A real NASCAR good old boy named Rafferty. He stands in front of his truck, looking at something in the distance with an astonished look on his face. There's a huge column of black smoke billowing up on the horizon. A sheriff's truck appears behind him and blows right by, lights flashing, siren wailing, heading towards the smoke. Rafferty hurries back to his truck, grabs the headset of his CB radio.
Sheriff, got your ears on? Come back.
Intercut. Interior sheriff's truck, dawn. Sheriff Len Hayes is at the wheel, 30s, good-looking, soft-spoken, competent. He picks up his radio handset.
Go ahead, Raph, make it snappy.
What the hell's going on out there? We under attack or something?
County says there's a commercial aircraft down. Looks like a big one.
Jesus, please. I'll follow you out, but there might be a lot of people hurt.
Negative on that. We've got a fire and an EMS crews coming in from 3 counties. We're going to be tripping over each other as it is.
I'll be there. Holler if you need anything.
10-4. Appreciate the offer.
End intercut. As the sheriff's truck disappears, Rafferty shields his eyes from the rising sun and watches the smoke climb into the morning sky. Interior Michael's bedroom, day. The same column of smoke is visible from 8-year-old Michael Elliott's bedroom window. He's a bright boy with inquisitive eyes, but there's something sad about him too. He gapes out the window as the smoke rises in the distance.
Whoa.
Interior Sarah Elliott's house, day. Sarah Elliott hurriedly pours a cup of coffee and grabs her purse. She's in her 20s, pretty but worn out, wearing a shabby waitress uniform. She spills a little coffee on herself and curses. Michael runs downstairs in his stocking feet.
Mom, come see this.
Not now, baby. We're late. Get your shoes on.
There's something on fire outside.
Michael, now, shoes.
Sarah quickly wets a washcloth and dabs at her stained uniform. Michael sighs and trudges back upstairs. Exterior, Christmas, New Mexico, day. The sun beats down on a cracked blacktop. There's a sign standing off by itself from a waving Santa Claus wearing sunglasses painted on it. It reads, "Welcome to Christmas. Population 318. Underneath is a sign for the local Optimist Club. There's no traffic in the streets, just dust blowing in from the surrounding desert. There's a gas station, a church, and an old town hall, but much of the rest of the town is deserted, empty storefronts and homes, remnants of a more prosperous time. There's nothing in sight for miles save low scrub brushes and the shadows of distant mesas. Christmas, New Mexico is little more than an isolated desert outpost on the cusp of oblivion." Exterior, Mighty Mart, day. Sarah pulls up the beaten Trans Am with Michael at the passenger seat. She parks in front of a quaint little country store. Interior, Mighty Mart, day. Bob Boyle hurriedly grabs a two-way radio and heads for the door. He's a gruff-looking man in his 40s, sunburned and calloused. He kisses his wife, Samantha. She's almost 10 years younger than him, soft-spoken and big-hearted.
Gotta go.
Okay, be safe, hon.
A bell rings over the door as Sarah and Michael enter. Bob hastily passes them on his way out and pats Michael's head.
Hey, Tiger. Morning, Sarah.
Samantha gives Sarah and Michael a confused look as they enter.
Watching today. Jolene bailed on me.
Samantha sighs wearily.
Sarah, you can't keep doing this. I've got my own things to deal with today, and Bob got called out to that plane crash.
There was a plane crash?
Yes, out past Route 57. Didn't you see the smoke?
I saw it.
Come on, Sam. I'm really late. Please, I swear I'll make it up.
Samantha glances over at Michael. He gives a resigned sigh. He's been through this more than once.
Right. I'll call Paulette. Maybe he can play with Ginnie next door. Would you like that?
Michael gives a non-committal shrug. Sarah breathes a sigh of relief and kisses him on the forehead as she hurries out the door.
Good for your Aunt Sam, okay?
Michael nods. Samantha sighs as he watches her go. Interior, firehouse, day. Bob hurries into the garage of the town hall, which doubles as the firehouse. There's a single fire truck that looks like it was new maybe 30 years ago and a banner advertising the Foster County Volunteer Firefighters Bake Sale. As Bob enters, he passes Maureen, pregnant, early 20s. She sits at a desk near the door with a CB radio.
Where is everyone?
Jamie's here. Billy's car won't start. Harold threw his back out again.
Bob goes to the lockers where Jamie Prescott is already grabbing his gear. Jamie's in his late 30s, looks like he might have been a football player in another life. They suit up as they talk.
Bull throws his back out every time we get a call. There are only 4 of us. Does he think we won't notice?
Tell Billy we'll pick him up on the way.
Exterior, crash site, day. Sheriff Hayes drives his truck over the uneven terrain leading to the crash site. He stops well away from the debris and steps out.
Holy moly.
In the light of day, we can see the full extent of the devastation. Burning wreckage is strewn all over a huge area surrounding a scorched crater. Only the tail section remains even remotely intact, twisted and blackened from the fire. Exterior desert day. Coyote tracks on the hard-baked soil. Little Bear is crouched next to them, rifle slung into the holster over one shoulder. He eyes the tracks, then stands up and looks back along the trail. He sees the column of smoke rising from behind the ridge. The tracks head in a straight line away from the crash site. Then he looks in the opposite direction. The tracks lead off to the empty desert, nothing but sagebrush and cracked earth for miles. Little Bear starts walking, following the coyote's tracks. Exterior crash site day. The volunteer firefighters arrive in their old truck. Hayes walks over to greet them as Bob, Jamie, and Billy get out. Billy looks just out of high school, tall and gangly, eager to please.
Let me guess. Harold hurt his back.
Yeah, go figure.
Now grab the Indian tanks. We'll start putting out some of those spot fires.
Hold up, Billy. You boys can't go in there yet. FBI says this is a federal crime scene. I've got to secure the site until they get here.
FBI, what do they think happened?
All I know is somebody thinks it wasn't an accident, so I don't want anybody near that thing if it turns out there was some sort of biological or chemical weapon on board.
Terrorists blew this plane up. The FBI is not going to want us just standing here watching the evidence burn. Hell, what if somebody's alive in there?
FBI is gonna tell us what not to do our jobs, not save lives.
I already talked to county about getting hazmat crew out here. They've got everything from here to Santa Fe on its way.
Till then, we're supposed to just wait.
Hayes considers this for a moment.
You got protective gear?
Got masks on the truck, and I can send Jamie to pick some stuff up from the store. We'll set up a decon area right here for anyone leaving the site.
All right. Do what you got to do. Just be careful about it.
Hayes watches uneasily as Bob and the others start pulling equipment from their truck. Exterior, abandoned military base day. A temporary military staging area has been set up along the boarded-up buildings and dilapidated hangars. National Guard troops double time around their assigned duties. Black Hawk helicopters are taking off and landing. Weeds grow through the cracks in the tarmac, but the old airfield is still intact. Prichard emerges from a Lear jet and its engine still winding down. He loosens his tie, walks into the blazing sun. Nick Weber, 50s, hurries over to greet him. Weber is tall and slender, and unlike Prichard, he's dressed for the desert.
Under Secretary Prichard, I'm Dr. Nicholas Weber, Epidemic Intelligence Service.
Exterior abandoned military base day, time cut. Prichard and Weber ride along across the tarmac in the back of an open-topped military jeep driven by a National Guardsman.
We weren't expecting anyone from Homeland Security to make it out here.
Neither was I. It's the security idea. It's the secretary's idea of reminding me who I work for. Forget it. When do we leave for the crash site?
We're rolling out as soon as the mobile lab gets here.
How likely is it that we'll get this cleaned up without an exposure?
We got two things going for us with smallpox. It typically doesn't live long in the open, and it can't be spread by animals. So as long as nobody starts poking around before we get there, I think we'll be all right.
Exterior crash site day. Bob and the other volunteer firefighters tromp through the burning wreckage wearing gas masks and spraying water from their tanks on their backs. The fires aren't big, but they're persistent. Billy sees a fire flare up near the broken tail section and picks his way towards it through the debris. He's sweating profusely under his gas mask, looking a bit queasy. He's spraying the fire with water when he hears something, a metallic clanging sound from behind him. Billy looks up. He hears it again. It's coming from inside of the tail section of the plane. He looks inside, but it's too dark to see anything. He cautiously moves closer. The scorched cabin is upside down, dead bodies still fastened into their seats above him. He swallows nervously. Then he hears it again, a hollow clank that echoes in the cabin. Hey, you guys, there's something in here. As he turns back, a figure lunges at him from the dark. Billy stumbles away, trips over some luggage, and falls down. Bob and Jamie run to his side, then look to see what has startled him. It's a man, tangled in his seatbelt and dangling from the ceiling. He's horribly burned, his clothes melted to his charred flesh, and he's gasping for breath. This guy's alive. Oh, Jesus, I got a live one! Exterior crash site day, time cut. Billy and Jamie carry the unconscious survivor on a stretcher. Bob stops them as they're leaving the debris field.
Sit him down. Let me decon you.
Billy and Jamie put the stretcher on the ground and step into the decontamination area, a plastic SpongeBob SquarePants kiddie pool where Bob proceeds to douse them with Clorox bleach. Sheriff Hayes stands by his truck, talking into his radio handset.
County, this is Sheriff Hayes. Where the hell are those paramedics? We've got a survivor here, but we need to know if it's been exposed to anything and where to take him if he has. Danny, you out there? Come back.
A long beat. A stern voice responds over the radio. Don't take him anywhere, Sheriff. We're en route to your location.
Who is this? County, who is en route?
Suddenly he hears something. A low rumbling noise like thunder rolling in from the desert. He looks up and sees a cloud of dust in the distance. The others hear the noise now, getting louder. They stop what they're doing and turn, following Hayes' look. It's a Black Hawk helicopter approaching over the desert. Another one appears from behind it, then another and another. Half a dozen Black Hawks in all, flying low in a V formation. Below them, dark shapes become visible through the cloud of dust, huge and lumbering, shimmering from the heat. Sunlight glints off the gleaming chrome. It's a convoy of semi-trucks hauling shiny silver trailers thundering across the hardpan. Blackhawks settle down near the crash site. Soldiers in hazmat suits jump out of them, clutching M16s. Sheriff Hayes starts towards the soldiers, then freeze as they raise their guns.
Stay where you are.
The trucks pull up and encircle them. More men in hazmat suits hop out of the truck, barking orders and unloading equipment. Billy and Jamie, still standing in the SpongeBob kiddie pool, dripping bleach and gape in astonishment at the sight. Oh, crap. Exterior desert hilltop day. Another pair of Blackhawks flies by right over our friend, the Coyote. The Coyote just stands there, not afraid at all, watching as the helicopters race toward the column of smoke in the distance. Then it turns and walks on. Fade to black, end of Act 2. Act 3. Fade in, exterior crash site day. The silver trailers that the semi-trucks brought have been linked together in a sophisticated mobile laboratory complex. The entrances are covered with clear plastic tents and guarded by soldiers wearing hazmat suits. More men in hazmat suits have entered the debris field, placing color-coded flags amongst the wreckage. Interior mobile lab isolation room day. Sheriff Hayes sits on an examination table, naked except for a hospital Johnny. Sommers, a lab technician in his 30s, is drawing blood samples from him. Prichard and Weber are there too. They're all wearing hazmat suits except Hayes.
The new smallpox test is pretty fast. We should know if you've been exposed in a couple hours.
What I want to know is why you didn't stop those firefighters from going in there.
Well, if I hadn't, that man they pulled out would have died.
You didn't know he was in there, and he's probably going to die anyway.
Look, I had to choose between guarding the crash site and preserving the crime scene. If I made the wrong decision, it's because you knew what was on that plane and didn't bother to tell us.
Here's how this works. We're going to tell you what you need to know when you need to know it. Until then, you can take a time out and hope your stupidity hasn't gotten anyone killed.
Weber gives Prichard an uncomfortable look. The lab tech finishes his blood draw and the three of them leave, the airlock door hissing shut behind them. Hayes watches uneasily as a light above the door turns red and the door locks with a loud click. Interior Centers for Disease Control day. Blackburn walks through a busy office filled with cubicles. Her assistant Marissa catches up to her and hands her a file folder.
Is this the file on Lukanov? Promise you won't shoot the messenger. Oh no, what now?
Blackburn starts to read the file, then stops in her tracks.
Oh my God.
Interior and Blackburn's office day. Blackburn is on the phone with Avery. She's got the Lukanov file open to a picture of him 25 years ago, dressed in the uniform of the Soviet Army.
This expert the Russians are sending, he's not in disease control. He's in disease manufacture.
Intercut Interior White House day. Avery is listening to Blackburn on his cell phone. He shows his ID to the Marine Guard and walks down an opulent corridor.
Back in the Cold War, he worked for the State Research Center of Virology and Biotechnology.
Made bioweapons for the Soviets.
He didn't just make bioweapons. We're talking about the Thomas Edison of germ warfare here. He was their top man in R&D. He ran the whole show until 1984 and then just suddenly vanished.
What do you mean vanished? What happened to him?
He quit. He was 42 years old, a highly paid scientist working for a top secret billion-dollar weapons program. And then one day, he just up and resigns, and nobody's heard from him since.
Until this morning when the Russians take him out of mothballs, put him on a plane, and tell us he's their bioterrorism expert. It doesn't make sense.
And dinner cut.
No, No, it doesn't. Unless he knows what's on that plane because he's the man who invented it.
Interior Russian jet night. The private jet seats 9, but there are only Lukanov, Petrovsky, and the 2 FSB agents, who are busily setting up a laptop computer and a webcam. Petrovsky quietly confers with Lukanov on the back of the plane. They speak in subtitled Russian.
Remember, you are to stick to our cover story that Vysenko was transporting stolen samples of smallpox.
This is no time for childish games. Thought we were helping them.
And we are, with certain limits. The Americans can contain and destroy this without ever learning what it really is.
They're not just gonna blindly do what I tell them. And when they figure out that you lied to them...
How are they going to do that exactly?
Lukanov scowls at him and turns away. Exterior Atomic Bar and Grill, Christmas, New Mexico, day. The rusty metal sign of the Atomic Bar and Grill creaks as it sways in the wind. A nondescript sedan is parked out front. Interior Atomic Bar and Grill, day. A rustic diner complete with a pool table, jukebox, and grill. The only customer is Mitch Brenner, fat and self-important, late 30s. He's wearing an ill-fitting suit and cowboy boots. He waits at the counter while the proprietor, Luis, scoops onion rings into a paper bag. Luis is in his 40s, stocky, wearing an apron and a hairnet. Sarah is behind the counter, watching the news program on the TV. Brenner is surreptitiously checking her out.
Folks, have you got yourself some excitement?
Luis thinks Brenner is talking to him and gestures to the TV.
Yeah, still waiting for them to start talking about us out there. You a reporter?
Nope, just passing through.
Luis sets the onion rings and a can of soda in front of Brenner and rings them up.
I get you anything else? How about a fried egg sandwich? Got my chicken coop out back. Eggs don't get any fresher than mine.
Maybe next time I'm in town.
Yeah.
He watches Brenner leave. Sarah doesn't look up from the TV. Exterior Atomic Bar and Grill, day. Brenner walks out to the sedan parked in front. This time we notice the seal on the door, Department of Justice, United States Marshal. As Brenner gets behind the wheel, we see for the first time there's a man in an orange jumpsuit in the back seat. He's handcuffed and separated from Brenner by a wire mesh, but he's still pretty scary looking. His name is Hollis Gates, early 20. He eyes Brenner's food.
Where's mine?
Up my ass.
Gross. Brenner opens the soda and starts his car. Interior Homeland Security HQ, Situation Room, day. Avery paces in front of a video wall. His aide hangs up the phone and turns to him.
We have a secure satellite link with the Russians.
All right, let's do this.
Interior Russian jet night. Lukanov and Petrovsky sit in front of a laptop computer with the webcam aimed at them. The computer screen has Avery's webcam image in one window and Blackburn in another. This should all look fairly real. No magic movie computer bullshit, please.
Mr. Petrovsky, I'd like to personally convey my gratitude for your government's candor and cooperation in this matter.
Intercut. Interior Homeland Security HQ, Situation Room, day. Avery stands in front of a video wall where Lukanov, Petrovsky, and Blackburn are displayed.
The Russian Federation has proven itself once again to be a valuable partner in the war on terror.
Is least we could do under the circumstances. Smallpox is truly horrendous disease. We gladly offer any assistance you require.
Lukanov gives him a sidelong glance at the mention of smallpox, but Petrovsky ignores it.
Good. In that case, I'm going to turn you over to Dr. Blackburn. She's Chief of Special Pathogens at the CDC.
Intercut with Blackburn's office, day. Blackburn sits at her computer, Lukanov's file in front of her. Lukanov, Petrovsky, and Avery are on her monitor.
Can we pause for a second? Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Hello, Dr. Lukanov, or do you still prefer to go by Colonel?
Petrovsky bristles warily. Lukanov is undisturbed.
Doctor will do.
Am I correct in assuming that we will have you to thank for the little bundle of joy on the plane?
I suppose indirectly, yes.
Terrific. What sort of protective equipment do you recommend for our people at the crash site?
Lukanov is about to respond, but Petrovsky interrupts.
I'm sorry. You say this plane has crashed?
That's correct. It exploded in the New Mexico desert a short while ago.
There were survivors? We don't think so, but we'd like to know what to expect if there are.
Petrovsky nods. A beat. Lukanov gives him a curious look. Suddenly, Petrovsky reaches over and yanks the cords out of the back of the laptop. End intercut. Interior Homeland Security HQ Situation Room. Petrovsky and Lukanov's image suddenly vanishes. Baffled, Avery turns to his aide, who helplessly shakes his head.
We've lost them.
Interior Russian jet, night. Lukanov grabs at Petrovsky in shock and outrage. They speak in subtitled Russian.
What are you doing? Have you lost your mind?
I'm aborting our mission. Vishenko's plane is blown up. The sample has been destroyed. It's over.
It is not over if even one cell somehow survived the crash.
One cell. Listen to yourself. You're completely paranoid. I am not going to jeopardize our national security assets for the sake of one cell.
Damn it. One cell is all it takes. We must help the Americans, and we must be certain it is destroyed, because if it gets out, if we let it slip through our fingers, it's not going to recognize borders, and it's not going to stop until everything you claim to defend is destroyed.
Don't lecture me on how to do my job. I've made my decision. Now sit down and shut up, or I will have you arrested and put in the gulag.
Petrovsky shoves Lukanov into a chair, forcing him to sit. Lukanov is fuming, but says nothing more. Petrovsky straightens his jacket and opens the door to the cockpit. A pilot and co-pilot are at the controls.
Take us home.
Pilot nods in acknowledgement. Petrovsky closes the door and returns to his seat. Lukanov slumps in defeat. Interior Mobile Lab ICU day. The plane crash survivor lies unconscious in a sealed chamber under an oxygen tent. He's got a machine breathing for him. Prichard peers in at him through a window. Weber approaches.
The tests on those first responders have come back negative for smallpox.
All right, hold them for a few hours, and then find a ride back to town.
2 more hours? What for?
They piss me off. Will he regain consciousness?
Not if he's lucky.
He might be able to tell us what happened up there.
Secretary wants you to question him.
Prichard turns and shoots Weber a look.
I'm making the calls here, not the secretary. You report to me, not to him. Has that not been made clear to you?
I'm sorry, I was just...
Yes, I want to question him. Let me know if he wakes up.
Prichard turns and walks away. Weber watches him go. Exterior highway day. Rafferty's utility truck drives down an empty stretch of road, passing a half-dozen military Humvees headed in the other direction. Interior utility truck day. Rafferty is cruising along, looking at the Humvees in his rearview mirror. A voice comes over his CB, but it's so badly garbled he can't understand it. Rafferty picks up the handset.
Dispatch, this is Rafferty. I didn't get that. Come back.
A voice replies, more distorted than before, disintegrating into a high-pitched squeal. Rafferty cringes and turns the CB off.
Jesus.
Then something catches his eye on the side of the road. In the distance, he can just make out Little Bear tromping through the desert, rifles held out in front of him. Rafferty's face scrunches in confusion. He cranes his neck to get a better look as he passes.
The hell?
Exterior highway day. Rafferty's truck drives by the town of Christmas, just visible on the bleak horizon ahead. As the truck passes, camera pans with it to reveal a little black-tailed jackrabbit on the side of the road, nibbling on some desert grass. Aw, pretty bunny! Suddenly, fleshy whipcord tendrils lash out from off-screen and grab hold of it. As the rabbit futilely struggles to escape, camera pans along the quivering tendrils to find the coyote. More fleshy tendrils erupt from the coyote's fur, and its head begins to split apart, open like the petals of a glistening pink orchid. Interior Mobile Lab conference room day. Prichard and Weber are seated at a long conference table with representatives of a dozen government agencies: FEMA, NTSB, FBI, ATF, CDC, USAMRIID, etc. Standing in front of them is General Antoine Wise in the Army National Guard. He's a mild-mannered gentleman in his 50s who's probably mistaken for a college professor when not in uniform. Behind him is a map of the crash site area.
The only population center for 50 miles is here. It's a small town called Christmas, population roughly 300.
He points out to the town of Christmas on the map.
Aside from contact with disaster relief personnel, they'll be completely off out from the outside world.
What about communications?
We've jammed all civilian cell phone and radio frequencies. Landlines are local use only and no longer receive calls from the outside of our zone of control.
How big is this zone of control?
General Wise points to 2 concentric circles on the map.
State police has set up roadblocks 20 miles from the hot zone. Our inner perimeter is 5 miles closer than a manned by the National Guard troops and full protective equipment. Aerial patrols are maintaining a no-fly zone, and we're working on a direct satellite feed from the National Reconnaissance Office. Sorry, I traversed that. When it's complete, this 1,200 square foot miles of empty desert will be the single most secure area in the entire country.
Interior Brenner's car day. Brenner is at the wheel. Gates looks out the window at the desert landscape, a sour expression on his face.
Get some air back here. This car smells like a damn armpit.
Not sort of high-class treatment you're accustomed to, huh?
You want to mock me now? You must be feeling pretty safe up there.
Wasn't trying to offend you. You didn't strike me as the sensitive type.
That doesn't mean I don't have my pride. Something you probably don't know anything about, showing up to drive people around in a smelly-ass car like this.
Is that some kind of joke? In what sick universe does a low-life piece of white trash like you have anything to be proud of?
Well, I've got myself a chauffeur.
I'm not a chauffeur. I'm a garbage man picking up the trash and hauling it into the dump to be burned.
Then Brenner notices something up ahead. It's a military roadblock. 2 armored vehicles are parked across the highway, flanked by soldiers in hazmat gear. Their faces are hidden by their gas masks. One of the soldiers waves for Brenner to stop.
What the hell is this?
Exterior highway roadblock day. 2 soldiers approach the cars, one hanging back from his M16 held at the ready. Brenner rolls down his window.
Sorry, sir, this area is under quarantine. You'll have to turn back.
Is there another way around?
No, sir, you're in the quarantine area.
How is that possible? We were just driving through. You let us in, but you won't let us out?
How you got in really doesn't matter to me. I need you to turn this vehicle around and head back to town.
This has something to do with that plane crash.
I'm not at liberty to discuss that, sir.
Brenner pulls out a badge and shows it to the soldier, who looks at it without touching it.
Look, I need to get through here. My name is Mitchell Brenner, and I'm a Deputy U.S. Marshal. I'm transporting this prisoner to Santa Fe for arrangement here. You can call my superiors if you need to confirm it.
Brenner offers him a business card, but the soldier doesn't take it. Brenner eyes him curiously.
Please keep your hands inside the car, sir. I'm going to ask you to pull over here and stay in your vehicle while I contact my CO.
Thank you.
The soldier turns away and Brenner parks the car. Gates gives him a cocky smile. Brenner sees it in the rearview mirror.
Change your plan, garbage man.
Shut up.
Exterior Christmas, outskirts day. The Coyote now stands atop a high ridge overlooking the entire town. The Coyote is strangely still, just patiently observing. A moment later, that little black-tailed jackrabbit comes hopping along beside it, still very much alive. The 2 natural enemies stand side by side, staring down at the town of Christmas with blank, inscrutable eyes. Interior Atomic Bar and Grill day. Sarah sits at the counter, watching TV news coverage of the plane crash. Luis enters from the kitchen. He's carrying a bunch of cardboard signs he's made to advertise the diner.
Hey, I'm not paying for you to sit there and watch TV all day. There's nobody here. What do you want me to do? Start getting the place ready. Where do you think all these reporters and cops are gonna go to when, they start getting hungry?
Sarah picks up a tray of salt shakers and starts filling them.
Sorry, I just wasn't thinking about how 200 people blown up a few miles from here, good for business. Hey, I'm doing my part to help. Everybody's got to eat sometime. Just might as well be here. So everybody. They're busy, like you should be. I'm going to start hanging these signs up along the highway.
Luis turns to leave, but something on the television catches his attention. An anchorman talking. Above his shoulder is a graphic of an airplane over a silhouette of New Mexico. We're going live now to Colleen Campbell, who's on the scene now in Foster's County, New Mexico. Colleen, what have you learned? The shot cuts to a reporter standing in front of a roadblock manned by a state trooper. They're not wearing hazmat gear. Not much, Hal. We're about 20 miles from the crash site, and that's as close as we can get. As you can see behind me, the state troopers are stopping everybody, and that's only fueling the rumors that there may have been a biological or chemical weapon on the plane as it went down. Sarah and Luis exchange an anxious look. Interior Milligan residence day. Paulette Milligan, early 20s, is on the phone and watching the same news broadcast on television. She's pacing nervously.
Yeah, I know. I'm watching it right now. Believe me, I tried. I can't get a hold of anyone. I just keep getting a busy signal every time I try to call long distance.
Screen door behind her opens and an angelic little girl enters. Her name is Ginnie. She's 7 years old, blonde hair, big blue eyes. She opens the refrigerator and looks inside.
Just a second. What are you looking for, sweetie? Do we have any carrots? Oh, I don't think so. What do you need carrots for?
Exterior Milligan residence day. Michael is at the Milligans' backyard, crouching on his heels, looking at something. Camera pulls back to reveal the black-tailed jackrabbit, wiggling its tail, twitching its nose, looking irresistible. Michael watches it curiously. Fade to black. End of Act 3. Act 4. Fade in, exterior Milligan residence day. Michael is completely captivated by the cute little bunny. It hops towards him. Michael pulls a leaf from a nearby bush and cautiously offers it. Ginnie comes running out of her house.
Careful, don't scare it.
Ginnie stops and watches, fascinated but afraid to get too close. Michael holds the leaf out to the rabbit again.
Come here, bunny. You want something to eat? Don't be scared.
The rabbit tentatively leans forward and sniffs at the leaf. Michael slowly crawls towards it. Ginnie stays behind him.
It's okay. Don't be scared. Does that smell good? You want to have some?
Just then, Samantha emerges from the back door of the nearby Mighty Mart and calls out to him.
Michael, come inside. I made you some soup. Don't tell her.
Ginny and me are playing.
You can play with Ginny after you eat. Come on, it's gonna get cold.
Michael groans. He drops the leaf and trudges away. Ginny watches him go, then turns back to the rabbit. She takes a moment to build up her courage, then she picks up the leaf and crouches, holding it out. The rabbit sniffs at it again. Ginny leans a little closer and it starts nibbling, eating from her hand. Ginny smiles, watching it. Then she notices another rabbit standing a few feet away. And another. A fourth rabbit comes hopping by as they all just stare at her with strangely attentive eyes. Interior Russian jet night. Petrovsky is in his seat, talking in Russian on the flight phone. Camera moves down the aisle to find Lukanov leaning back in his seat. He cringes painfully and rubs his chest. Petrovsky hands up and eyes Lukanov. They speak in subtitled Russian.
Bad heart?
Not great.
You see, it's the best that we have to go home. A man your age should be playing with his grandchildren and not flying halfway around the world.
Yes, you're right, of course.
Lukanov stands up and goes to his carry-on bag.
What are you doing?
Getting my medicine. Do you mind?
Petrovsky shrugs. Lukanov picks up his bag and rummages through its contents. Petrovsky turns to one of the agents.
Pour him a glass of water.
Thank you.
Suddenly, Lukanov whips out a 9mm Makarov pistol from the bag and shoots Petrovsky between the eyes. Petrovsky drops his phone and flops back into his chair. The agents reach into their trench coats but freeze when Lukanov whirls and points his gun at them.
Weapons on the floor. Slowly. Kick them over to me. Hands behind your heads.
The agents do what they're told. Lukanov picks up both guns. He puts one gun in his pocket, then aims the other at the co-pilot, who has just emerged from the cockpit to see what's going on. Lukanov gestures with the gun for him to return to the cockpit and follows him, the other gun still pointed at the FSB agents.
Turn to our original courses. Course. Just course.
The pilot looks back, sees Petrovsky with a hole in his head and the agents standing by helplessly with their hands in the air. He anxiously nods and turns back to the controls. When Lukanov looks away, the pilot surreptitiously presses a hidden button. Lukanov turns to the FSB agent and gestures to the laptop.
Call the Americans.
They exchange a hesitant look. Lukanov presses his other gun to the back of the cringing pilot's head and cocks the hammer.
Do it, or I'll shoot them both and we all die.
Interior mobile lab conference room day. Prichard and Weber stand in front of a television monitor watching a press conference with Secretary Avery.
The Red Cross will have a team there tomorrow morning to see to their needs. In the meantime, we'll be asking the residents of Christmas to remain calm and stay indoors unless absolutely necessary. We're also imposing a mandatory sundown to sunup curfew until further notice.
Has there condition been any further news on the condition of the survivor?
As I mentioned, we don't at this point believe there were any survivors.
So you don't know anything about firefighters pulling a man from the wreckage with the burns covering 90% of his body?
That's, we've had no reports like this, but we'll update you if that changes.
Richard smiles at Avery's discomfort. Weber turns to him.
Didn't tell him.
Must have slipped my mind.
Interior Mighty Mart apartment net day. These are the living quarters behind the store. Samantha is in the kitchen cleaning up. Michael stands in front of the coffee table, eating his soup and drawing a picture. He draws a woman and writes Aunt Sam above it.
Ginnie says Sam's a boy's name.
Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's also short for Samantha. Does anybody ever call you Mike instead of Michael?
Dale does.
From the frown on his face, it's clear he doesn't like it much.
How are you and Dale getting along?
Fine.
Yeah, right. His mood darkens every time the name is mentioned.
Well, your mom hasn't had a boyfriend in a long time. He makes her really happy, you know.
Michael shrugs. Samantha comes over and looks at his drawing. It's a picture of a house. Out front, we see two small people, one big person, and a rabbit. There are hills behind the house, and a curlicue of black smoke rising from them.
That's really good. Is that the smoke you saw this morning?
He nods. Samantha notices the three people are labeled Ginnie, me, and Aunt Sam. She eyes them curiously.
Where's your mom?
Michael shrugs again. Samantha gives him a troubled look. Exterior Atomic Bar and Grill day. Luis walks out of the back door carrying an empty wire basket and heads towards the chicken coop behind the diner. Suddenly, there's a crazed clucking from inside the hen house. Chickens start running out of it, frantically flapping around in their ramshackle pen. Luis runs over to see what's going on and stops short. There's a gaping hole in the chicken wire and paw prints in the dirt. Interior Atomic Bar and Grill day. Luis runs in, completely furious. He hurries to the counter and pulls a sawed-off shotgun from under the cash register. Sarah's eyes clearly pop out when she sees it.
What the hell are you doing? Damn coyote in the chicken coop.
Exterior Atomic Bar and Grill day. Luis runs outside just in time to see the coyote dash out of the chicken coop in a cloud of white feathers. As Sarah watches wide-eyed from the doorway, Luis races the shotgun and shoots twice. Bam, bam. But completely misses and the coyote gets away. Exterior Highway Roadblock day. Brenner's car is still parked on the side of the road. Brenner punches a number into his cell phone. It beeps. The display reads, no signal. He puts it back into his pocket and glances into his side mirror. The two soldiers are approaching.
Sir, we can make arrangements to hold your prisoner for you, but you're going to have to go back to town and wait for instructions like everybody else.
Prisoner's my responsibility. Did you call the marshal's service?
My orders came directly from my CO.
Let me talk to him.
I'm afraid that's not possible, sir.
Brenner gives an exasperated sigh, glances at Gates in the rearview mirror, then turns back to the soldier.
How long are we likely to be stuck here?
I don't have that information. You'll be notified when it's safe to leave.
Safe for who?
A beat. The soldier doesn't answer. Brenner gives Gates an irritated look, then glares angrily at the soldier.
Tell your CEO to expect a call from the Justice Department.
Brenner rolls up his window and drives off, back the way he came. Exterior crash site day. Weber emerges from the mobile lab in his hazmat gear and enters the debris field. Dozens of others in similar protective gear are still out there, flagging remains and taking samples. Bodies are covered and carried to the lab on stretchers. One man, broiling in his hazmat suit, swoons and falls to his knees. As the others hurry to his aid, Weber calls out.
Make sure everybody stays hydrated. I don't want anyone out here longer than an hour until it starts to cool off.
As he watches them help the man back to the mobile lab, an EIS officer waves at him from the other part of the crash site. The EIS officer and another man are huddled around something on the ground, but we can't see what it is.
Dr. Weber over here.
Weber walks over and the two men step back to show him what they have found. Weber stops short when he sees it.
Holy mother of God.
Whatever it has been burned nearly beyond recognition. It's just a long, twisted knot of charred flesh, a nightmarish, misshapen perversion of melted skin, with 3 agonized human faces gaping out of it. Exterior chicken coop day. Luis leads Little Bear into the wire enclosure. Nervous chickens scatter as they enter. Luis points out the hole in the wire.
Can you believe this? Chewed right through my fence in broad daylight.
Little Bear sticks his head in the henhouse. Everything seems normal. Chickens sitting on nests and pecking at the ground.
He get any of your chickens?
No, I got lucky this time, but if I hadn't come out here when I did, it would have cost me plenty.
Little Bear turns back and points at the hole in the fence.
You sure this wasn't here before?
You think I wouldn't have noticed it?
Coyote'd take a while to chew through this wire. Your chickens would have been going crazy.
Well, if it wasn't that coyote that made the hole, what was it?
A beat. Little Bear touches the Naha necklace he's wearing.
My grandfather used to say that sometimes when you see a coyote, it's just an animal, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's a skinwalker, a witch in disguise.
Trust me, that wasn't no dude wearing some coyote costume.
Little Bear nods. He's about to leave, then turns back to Louise.
There's a story about Coyote changing into a man so he could sleep with this man's wife, and even the wife couldn't tell the difference.
Ooh.
Coyote's a trickster. It came here for a reason. Best keep your eyes open.
Yeah. Okay. I'll do that.
Little Bear turns away and starts following the coyote's tracks. Louise gives him a skeptical look and watches him go. Interior Homeland Security HQ, Situation Room day. Avery is pacing angrily as he talks on his cell phone. He tries to keep his voice low so nobody overhears him.
What the hell is this business about a survivor getting pulled out of the wreckage?
Interior Mobile Lab Conference Room day. Prichard is talking on his cell phone.
Yeah, he's in pretty bad shape. I didn't tell you about it because I didn't figure he'd make it.
So it's true? I'm going to look pretty damn foolish when I have to tell the president that the Washington Post knew about this before I did.
Somebody must have leaked it. I'll get right on tracking that down.
Don't insult my intelligence. I know where the leak came from, you snake son of a bitch. I send you out there, I give you a chance to show people what you're made of, and you...
Now you're insulting my intelligence. You weren't doing me any favors. The president wants somebody's head for this, and you want me out of the way.
Don't flatter yourself. I don't take you that seriously.
That was your first mistake. The second was trading control of this situation for a FaceTime with the president. From now on, you want to know what's going on, watch CNN.
Prichard hangs up. Avery looks like his head is going to explode. As he hangs up the cell phone, his aide excitedly appears behind him.
We have Dr. Lukanov again.
A telephone rings as the aide turns to answer it. Avery takes a moment to try to calm down, then gestures to the video wall and looks over at the speakerphone. Lukanov appears on the screens, looking very calm.
Apologies for the interruption, Mr. Secretary.
Is there some sort of problem?
Not anymore. We may continue.
Just then, Avery notices the aide still on the phone, frantically gesturing to him and hastily scribbling a note.
All right. Well, just a second, please.
The aide urgently hands the note to Avery, who puts on his glasses and reads it. It says he's hijacked the plane. Avery does a double take and gives the aide an incredulous look. The wide-eyed aide exaggeratedly jerks his head towards Lukanov. Avery looks back to the video wall. An awkward beat.
Where is Mr. Petrovsky? I'd like to talk to him as well.
Interior Russian jet night. Lukanov sits at the front of the laptop computer. The FSB agents are tied up and sitting on the deck in front of the cockpit. Lukanov holds his gun just out of view of the camera.
Unfortunately, Mr. Petrovsky is, well, he's dead. I shot him.
I see. And why would you want to go and do something like that?
My government has not been as forthcoming about this incident as they would like you to believe. Ivan Vinsiko was carrying a vial of some vial stolen from the Renaissance Island Biological Test Facility with the intention of launching a biological suicide attack against the United States. My government realized too late what was happening and warned you of the threat, but they lied to you about one thing, Mr. Secretary. They lied to you about the vial Visenko brought aboard that plane contained smallpox, because it did not.
So what was it?
Let's not get ahead of ourselves. I can help you, but first, I need you to help me.
The United States does not negotiate with terrorists.
I'm not a terrorist. I'm just so flustered. I'm a humanitarian.
I doubt Mr. Petrovsky would see it that way.
Mr. Petrovsky's opinion no longer matters. This plane will enter American airspace in just 2 hours. I want safe transit to the crash site and your government's guaranteed protection from arrest and extradition after I land.
So you want asylum? You understand that your government won't take too kindly to us harboring someone they'll consider to be a traitor.
What will please or displease my government is irrelevant. You must hear what I have to say.
Not under these circumstances, Doctor. We can deal with this on our own.
I assure you, you cannot. But don't take my word for it. Talk to your people in New Mexico. I'll call you back in precisely 2 hours.
Avery is about to say something, but the video screen abruptly goes dark again. Avery sighs and turns back to his aide.
Get Ann Blackburn on the horn ASAP.
Interior mobile lab necropsy room. The twisted body is found in the plane crash has been laid out on a stainless steel table. Weber and Sommers prepare to conduct the autopsy while 2 interns take photographs and shoot video. A nurse draws blood from the body. They all wear hazmat suits.
Subjects are of indeterminate gender, age also indeterminate due to the high state of charring. The body or bodies are conjoined, presumably by the extreme heat.
Say again, Sommers?
It was human bodies don't melt. They
You got a better explanation?
Sommers shakes his head. Weber looks over the bodies carefully.
There's a central trunk and 3 distinct heads, abnormally shaped, again, presumably due to the heat.
A long beat. He looks down at one of the hideously deformed heads. He sighs and picks up a pair of blunt scissors.
All right, I'm making my incision to open the what appears to be the shared thoracic and abdominal cavities. Careful of the sharps.
He cuts through the charred flesh with the scissors, then carefully works his hands into the incision and pulls it apart. Sommers groans at what he sees. Even Weber is taken aback.
Christ, what a mess. Okay, organ situs is grossly asymmetric. I'm seeing multiple severe deformities.
He reaches in and starts examining the internal organs. They're bloated and misshapen, dripping with some sort of secretion.
Liver is enlarged, deformed, and misplaced. Not even 100% sure I'm looking at the liver. Other organs appear to have liquefied. Now, come on, sponge this. I'm swimming in here.
Sommers tries to dab the bloody fluid with the sponge, but it's too sticky. Weber turns to the intern with the video camera.
Are you getting all this?
The intern nods shakily.
Good. Maybe when we're done, we can sell the tape to the Fox network.
Yeah, America's grossest home videos.
Interior Atomic Bar and Grill day. Sarah has one eye on the TV news as she pours a coffee for Shiner, a skinny old man sitting at the counter. He's the only customer. Luis enters from the back with a wire basket full of eggs.
You take your break? Yeah, like an hour ago. Okay, just go home. Oh, come on. You know I need the hours. I got no more customers. The longer you stay here, the more money I lose. Go.
Sarah glares at him for a moment, then angrily slams down the coffee pot, grabs her purse, and storms out, muttering under her breath. Shiner just sips his coffee, as if nothing's happened. Louise puts some bread in the toaster and sets a pan on the stove.
You see that? She's got no understanding of economics. How does she think I'm going to pay for her when I got no customers?
Shiner doesn't say anything. Hard to tell if he's even aware Louise is talking. Louise cracks an egg into the pan. Crack. Sizzle.
Deos and their damn roadblocks. There hasn't been a truck that's gone through here all day, and they're running my business, you know.
Takes another egg from the basket, cracks it in the pan. Crack. Sizzle. And another. Crack. Sizzle.
They should pay me some compensation. Should get some pain and suffering, you know, for all my mental anguish.
He cracks another egg into the pan. Crack. Scream! The instant the yolk hits the hot pan, it screams and seems to turn inside out, blossoming with tiny tentacles and pincers. Louise screams too, stumbling back against the counter and falling on his ass. The egg thing shrieks at him like fingernails on a chalkboard, then frantically slithers out of the pan, away from Louise, and drops behind the oven out of sight. A moment later, it's like nothing even happened. Louise sits frozen, trying to catch his breath. Shiner, one hand still on his coffee, looks at the pan with wide, startled eyes.
Something wrong with your eggs.
A beat. Heart pounding in his chest, Louise leans back, trying to look beneath the oven. He can't see anything from this angle, and he's not quite ready to stick his face down there. Silence. Then the sound of little wet feet running across the floor behind the oven. Pitter splat, pitter splat. Louise scrambles to his feet and leans back, trying to catch a glimpse of it.
See it?
Silence again. Shiner picks up his coffee, gets up from his stool, and slowly starts backing towards the door. Suddenly, a shoestring-thin tendril drops from the ceiling, whips around his neck, and yanks him off his feet. The little egg thing is stuck to a rafter and is pulling him towards it. As Shiner gasps for air, the egg thing starts shooting a stream of what looks like toxic silly string into his mouth. Where it misses and hits his face, the flesh starts to burn. He tries to scream, but can only manage a choking, gagging cough. Louise watches in horror for a second before his brain starts working again. The shotgun. It's sitting on a shelf behind the counter. Louise grabs it, but before he can use it, the rest of the eggs in the wire basket simultaneously burst with a shrieking cry. The basket splits open and a grotesque mass of flesh rides out of it. Weird, spiny spider legs, flailing whipcord tendrils, and the slavering snout of a coyote. Louise shoots it with a shotgun and splat, the glistening mass explodes right into his face. Louise recoils in disgust, dripping with blood and tissue. But his disgust quickly turns to horror as the bits of flesh begin to wiggle and crawl over his body. He frantically tries to fling them off, screaming as they start boring their way into his skin. Fade to black. End of Act 4. Act 5. Fade in, exterior highway day. A long stretch of road dotted with utility poles. Nothing in sight except for Rafferty's utility truck parked on the shoulder. The bucket is raised and Rafferty's in it, working on a power transformer. Below, the coyote approaches and stops next to the truck, looking up at Rafferty. Not growling or snarling, watching. After a moment, Rafferty notices it.
Dad, get out of here. Shoot.
The coyote doesn't even blink. Rafferty goes back to work and the coyote just keeps watching him. He looks down at it again and sighs. This time he throws a wrench at it. The wrench clatters to the pavement next to the coyote, but the coyote doesn't move. It stands there staring up at him. Exterior Atomic Bar and Grill day. Brenner parks his car and gets out. Gates calls to him from the back seat.
Crack a window, will you? It's 100 damn degrees.
Brenner slams the door, leaves the window up, and walks into the diner. Gates glowers at him.
Son of a...
Interior Atomic Bar and Grill day. Brenner enters to find the place empty. Shiner's shattered coffee cup is still on the floor where he dropped it, and the TV is still showing coverage of the plane crash, but there's no one around.
Hello, anybody back there?
A long, silent beat. Then we hear movement from behind the door leading to the kitchen. There's a circular window on the door, and we see Louise's face rise into view and peer out. Brenner smiles.
Hey, looks like I might take you up on that fried egg sandwich after all.
Louise just stares at him from behind the door, then nods slowly, sweating profusely.
Can I use your phone?
Another long beat. Louise nods towards the phone. Brenner follows his look. He picks up the phone and dials a number. Louise's watchful eye follows his every move. He's breathing hard. Sweat is coming off of him in buckets. Brenner's call doesn't go through. He hangs up and turns to Louise.
Hey, your phone's not working.
Suddenly, the camera racks focus to reveal Shiner standing right behind him. Interior, atomic bar and grill, kitchen, day. As Louise watches through the window of the kitchen door, we hear the sounds of violent struggle from the off-screen, followed by a familiar chittering hiss. Camera pulls back from Louise, and we see that his head is actually atop a long serpentine neck of glistening pink flesh. Camera follows the length of the writhing neck down where the rest of the body lies sprawled on the floor, roiling in the midst of grotesque transformation. Exterior, atomic bar and grill, day. Gates impatiently sits in the back of Brenner's car. He experimentally tugs the chain securing his wrist to the floorboards, but it's no use. He's not going anywhere. Then the door to the diner opens a bit, but Brenner doesn't come out. As Gates watches curiously, a hand reaches out and hangs a sign on the door. Gone fishing. Then the hand slips back inside and the door closes again. Interior, Mighty Mart, day. Samantha is stocking the shelves when a bell above the door rings. Sarah enters and stands in the doorway.
Hey, what are you doing back so soon?
Lewis let me off early. Place is dead. Michael, time to go home.
Michael pokes his head in from the apartment, or from the door leading to the apartment.
Aunt Sam said I could play with Ginnie.
Tomorrow. Come on. Kiss Aunt Sam goodbye.
He frowns and gives Samantha a limp hug. She kisses his head.
Bye, sweetheart.
Michael trudges towards the door. Sarah reaches for him, but he steps out of her reach and leaves. Sarah shrugs. Kids. Just as she's about to leave, Bob enters. He's still in fire gear and looks exhausted. Samantha sighs in relief.
Thank God. Why didn't you call me and let me know you were okay? Do you know what they're saying on TV?
I'm sorry, baby. I've had a really strange day.
Gives her a tired hug. Sarah waves to them both and leaves.
See you guys later. Thanks for watching the Munchkins.
Exterior, Mighty Mart, day. As Sarah walks out to her car, she notices another vehicle driving away. A huge military Humvee. She gives it a surprised look. Michael sits in the car, sadly looking at Ginny's house. He sees her inside, looking at him. Sarah starts the car and drives off. Michael waves at Ginny as they pass, and Ginny waves back. Exterior, Jamie's house, day. The Humvee Sarah saw stops in front of a modest house. There's another house next door, and the two properties divided by a low chain link fence. Jamie gets out of the Humvee and it pulls away. Jamie looks up the drive and sees Harold, 30s, standing at the screened-in porch with the neighboring house. He's tall and skinny, wearing a ball cap and drinking a beer. Jamie eyes him angrily.
How's the back there, Harold? How's the back?
Better.
Oh,
Took
sorry.
a couple of these, cleared it right up. What happened to you?
What do you care? Got the same call we all did, but you stayed home and drank beer all day while we were, sticking our necks out.
From the looks of it, that was a good move on my part.
I don't get you. Why bother training to be a volunteer fireman if you're never going to answer the calls?
The uniform, Hoss. Pure panty peeler.
Mm-hmm.
Harold goes inside, the screen door thwacking shut behind him. We hear him belch off screen. Jamie shakes his head and angrily turns away. Exterior, atomic bar and grill, day. Gates is still waiting in the back of Brenner's car, which is turned into an oven. Gates' jumpsuit is soaked with sweat and his hair is plastered to his head. The diner is still closed. Brenner is nowhere in sight. Gates yells towards the diner.
Hey, you bastard, I'm boiling out here. You trying to kill me? What the hell is this?
He tugs at his chain and thrashes around. There's no getting out of this. Then he looks down and sees something under the seat in front of him. Brenner's empty soda can. It must have rolled out of the seat from the front. He reaches for it, just out of his grasp. He tries again and this time manages to get a finger on it. He grabs the can and quickly twists off the pull tab. Exterior, highway, day. Little Bear follows the coyote tracks along the side of the road. Up ahead, he sees Rafferty's utility truck still parked on the shoulder. The bucket is down now, but Rafferty is nowhere to be seen. Little Bear curiously approaches. The truck appears to have been abandoned. The coyote tracks lead right to it. Little Bear cautiously takes a couple more steps and then slowly peers around the back of the truck. Rafferty sits in the rear bumper, lacing his boots. Little Bear's eyes flick to the paw prints in the ground, then back to Rafferty. Little Bear clutches his rifle and is about to back away when Rafferty sees him. He looks Little Bear over, sizing him up.
What?
A beat. Little Bear and Rafferty eye each other uncertainly.
You see a coyote go by here?
Yeah. How'd you know?
Been tracking it. You see which way it went?
Rafferty looks at him for a long moment, then points towards the desert. Little Bear gives him a weak nod.
Much obliged.
He turns away and starts off in the direction Rafferty pointed. Rafferty never takes his eyes off him. Little Bear looks back and sees Rafferty watching him.
You feeling okay?
Yeah. You?
A beat. Little Bear doesn't answer, just watches him warily and then continues on his way. Rafferty watches him go. Interior and Blackburn's office, night. Blackburn is at her computer, clicking through digital pictures of the autopsy Weber conducted and talking on the phone.
Oh my God. Could this have been caused by the fire?
Interior mobile lab office, day. Weber paces anxiously as he talks to Anne on the phone.
That's what I tried to tell myself at first, but these deformities are on a cellular level. This body was like this before it was burned.
Have you got labs back?
Yeah, for all the good they did. I've had these people running every test I can think of, but it's like the closer you look at them, the less sense it makes.
Sounds like you're just throwing darts at a board.
Hissing in the wind is more like it. I put a blood sample under the microscope to see why the hemoglobin level was so low. Turns out it's rat blood. This person, or whatever it is, had rat blood pumping in its veins.
That's not possible.
Yeah, welcome to my world.
All right, get those first responders back. I want them in isolation until we know more about this. We're obviously not talking about smallpox anymore.
And I got PhDs in virology and microbiology and a master's in medical parasitology. This isn't just not smallpox. It's an abomination. If there was a disease on that plane that can do this to a human being, we're in way bigger trouble than we thought.
Interior mobile labs morgue, day. The room is completely dark. Suddenly, hiss. An airlock door opens and fluorescent ceiling lights flicker to life, revealing the twisted corpse from the crash site. It's on a stainless steel gurney covered in a white sheet, but there's no disguising the monstrosity beneath. There are other human remains there, many of them just grisly pieces in clear plastic baggies. Two people in hazmat suits enter. Maybe we've seen them before, maybe we haven't, we can't tell. Their faces are obscured by shadow. The sounds of their breath reverberate in the suits. They wheel in a corpse zipped inside a black body bag, then lay it on the floor at the end of a long row of other body bags. One of the two people leaves and seals the door. The other stands over the body they just brought in, laying out a form on a clipboard. Then behind him or her, the deformed mystery body on the gurney moves. Very subtly, a shift beneath the sheet. The person writing on the clipboard doesn't notice. There's a strange, hollow crunching sound like someone under the sheet is cracking open a particularly juicy lobster. Suddenly, 4 long, spiny arachnoid legs slide out from underneath the sheet. They lightly touch the floor and begin wheeling the gurney towards the person writing on the clipboard. It looks like a bizarre spider with a sheet-covered corpse on the gurney for a body and 4 hairy legs pushing it forward. The wheels of the gurney need to be oiled. Squeak, squeak, squeak. The person it's creeping up on can't hear it over the sound of their own breathing in the hazmat suit. The thing is right behind the person when they finally turn around and see it. Interior Homeland Security HQ, Situation Room, night. Avery is talking on the phone.
Why would the Russians have lied to us about what was on that plane?
Exterior, Atlanta Hartsfield International Airport, night. Blackburn is talking to Avery on her cell phone as she walks across the tarmac towards a government jet. Its engines are already warming up, and she almost has to shout to be heard. Other members of the CDC team hurry aboard behind her.
I don't know, maybe it's something new. Something they want to keep secret.
I just got off the phone with their deputy prime minister. He says Lukanov's been disturbed for years, ever since the death of his wife. Maybe he finally just lost it.
They're the ones who put him on that plane. Now they're saying the expert they sent us is a crazy person?
I don't know, but we need to make a decision on this. Lukanov's plane crosses into our airspace in about 20 minutes.
Why can't we hear what he has to say and then send him home if we find out he's nuts?
Not that simple. This could snowball into a major international incident. If we listen to this guy and he turns out to be a whack job, you and I are both screwed.
But that body they autopsied is not normal. It's nothing we've ever seen before. We need answers. Lukanov's given up everything just to try and tell us something. I say we hear what he has to say.
Interior Russian jet night. Lukanov is in front of the laptop. Avery and Blackburn are on a screen. An image is downloading in another window.
We getting warm yet, Doctor?
The image that slowly fills the screen is one of the gruesome autopsy photos that Weber sent to Blackburn.
Yes. Very warm.
Interior CDC jet night. The small plane is crowded on the CDC team with the CDC team and their equipment. Blackburn is seated at the computer workstation in the back. She sees Lukanov's horrified expression on her screen.
Dr. Lukanov?
I'm sorry. In spite of everything, I sincerely hope that I was wrong.
So you recognize this?
Yes, this body is definitely infected. You must destroy it immediately. Burn it until nothing remains.
Infected with what, Doctor?
Interior Homeland Security HQ Situation Room night. Avery stands by the speakerphone. Lukanov and Blackburn are on the video wall.
First, I want to know what arrangements have been made for my arrival.
You'll be arriving at an abandoned military base where we've set up our staging area. We're transmitting the coordinates to your pilot now.
I want my protected status guaranteed. In writing.
You'll be granted asylum on a provisional basis. That means the second we think you're crazy or lying, you're on the next plane back to Moscow with my foot still up your ass.
That is acceptable.
Then tell us what we need to know, Doctor. What should we be doing?
Burn everything. Every sample, every slide, everything that comes in contact with this body. Do it in teams. Don't leave anyone alone with it. The same goes for your man in intensive care. Don't take your eyes off him. And whatever you do, don't let anyone leave the quarantine zone. That includes your own people. They may not be who they appear to be.
A beat. Avery and Blackburn give him a confused look. Even some of the people working behind Avery in the Situation Room turn and eye Lukanov strangely.
I don't understand. What do you mean, who they appear to be?
Do as I said. God save us, but this is only the beginning.
Lukanov clicks a button and Avery and Blackburn disappear from his screen. He sits back and gives the autopsy photo a troubled look. Exterior Christmas, dusk. The sun sets behind the mesas, silhouetting the lonely town and casting long, dark shadows in its dusty streets. Rafferty's truck is parked by the Santa Claus's welcome sign, engine idling. Interior Rafferty's truck, dusk. Rafferty grimly sits in the driver's seat, staring out of the windshield and slowly, deliberately drumming his fingers on the steering wheel. Beads of sweat stand out on his forehead. He holds up a hand and sees it's trembling. Then he sighs and wipes the sweat from his face. A beat. He steps on the gas. Exterior Christmas, dusk. Rafferty's truck passes the welcome sign and drives into town. Exterior desert, dusk. A rusty no trespassing sign hangs from a dilapidated wire fence. Camera moves to find the coyote loping along beside it. Suddenly, the coyote freezes. It senses something and looks back. Little Bear lies atop a distant ridge, clutching his rifle, peering at the coyote through his sights, his finger on the trigger when the coyote turns and looks right at him. He hesitates and the coyote takes off running. Little Bear pulls the trigger. Bam! The bullet kicks up dirt at the coyote's feet. Little Bear takes another shot and the coyote dodges again, running towards the wire fence. He tries to leap over it, but brushes the top wire and zap! It's an electrified fence. The coyote falls against it, thrashing wildly at the buzzing wire. It howls in agony, and suddenly the coyote begins to change. A series of bulges begins spasming out of its body, not the slow, deliberate changes we've seen before, but a wild, convulsive fit, as if something inside the coyote is being forced out of its body. The coyote's howl of pain turns into a ghastly shriek. A human face emerges from the coyote's open mouth, and it's screaming too. We recognize it as the face of a man we've seen, Ivan Vitsenko. Little Bear recoils in disgust and shoots it, but the coyote man thing just howls louder, writhing and squirming in pain. Suddenly, a blinding light rises over the ridge, forcing Little Bear to look away. It's a Black Hawk helicopter, shining a spotlight right in Little Bear's face. Little Bear leaps to his feet and starts to run, but the Black Hawk swings around, cutting him off, kicking up a blinding cloud of dust. Little Bear stops, disoriented, holding up a hand to cover his eyes. A voice booms from the loudspeaker.
Drop the weapon and get down on the ground.
Little Bear does as he's told. The helicopter sets down and two soldiers in hazmat gear get out. As they run towards him, Little Bear turns and looks over at the electric fence, which looks as if it's been violently ripped apart. The coyote man thing is gone. Interior Sarah Elliott's house, night. Michael's at the dining room table playing with some toy cars. Sarah comes in from the kitchen with a stack of plates. She's put on makeup and is wearing a dress, nice considering her budget. She puts the plates on the table and glances at the toy cars.
I need you to move that stuff from you, sweetie.
Michael frowns and watches his mom set the table.
How come we're eating in here?
Making a special dinner. Dale's coming over.
Michael's face falls. He suddenly starts putting the toy cars back into the shoebox he keeps them in and mutters under his breath.
I hate him.
Sarah stops and gives him a shocked look.
That is a terrible thing to say.
Well, I do.
No, you don't.
Exterior Sarah Elliott's house, night. A handheld POV from the porch. Sarah and Michael are visible through the thin curtains. There's someone out there spying on them and eavesdropping.
I know this has been hard to get used to, but Dale has never been anything but nice to you. I don't ever want to hear that. I don't ever want to hear you say that you hate him again.
Interior Sarah Elliott's house, night. Michael looks thoroughly chastised, his eyes downcast.
Do you understand me?
Michael solemnly nods. Suddenly, there's a knock at the door. Sarah sighs. She goes to answer it, waving to the toy cars.
Get this cleaned up.
Sarah opens the door. Camera moves in on Michael watching.
Dale, you're early. Oh, you're so sweet.
There's a man at the door. Sarah kisses him. When she steps back, we get our first look at her boyfriend. Of course, we've already met him. It's Rafferty. As he walks in, he hands Sarah a bouquet of flowers and gives Michael an inscrutable look.
Neither am I.
And now we see the name stitched on his work shirt, Dale. Fade to black, end of Act 5. Act 6. Fade in. Exterior desert night. The Humvee is parked and Little Bear sits in the back, hands bound behind him. A soldier in hazmat gear has confiscated Little Bear's rifle. He pulls out the rifle's ammo and pockets it. The helicopter can be heard buzzing overhead. More soldiers search the area. Their sergeant is near the Humvee talking to the radio. He's got Little Bear's driver's license.
Command, this is November 7-4. We've detained a curfew violation. One male, Native American, 42 years old. Last name Little Bear, first name Frank. You got anything on him? Over.
Negative November 7-4. He's clean here. What's his story? Over.
We picked him up on foot, armed with a rifle. Says he was hunting a werewolf or something. Over.
Come again, November 7-4.
Little Bear hears this last bit and speaks up.
Not a werewolf, a skinwalker. What's the difference? Werewolves aren't real?
The sergeant's about to respond, then turns the radio on so their exchange can be overheard.
And what's the skinwalker look like again? Anything it wants to. It's a shapeshifter. Right now it's taken the shape of a coyote, but when it's caught in the electric fence over there, a man came out of it.
Sergeant eyes him dubiously and talks into the radio again.
You get that? Over.
We copy November 7-4. We copy and want no part of it. Take that crazy SOB back to town. Over.
Copy that.
Just then, one of the soldiers approaches the sergeant.
We're clear.
All right, let's move it out.
The soldier quickly begins piling into the Humvee. Little Bear tries to get the sergeant's attention.
A skinwalker's only intent is to spread evil and chaos. You need to let me go help find it. I wouldn't worry too much, Mr. Little Bear. It's probably just out on a hot date with the chupacabra.
The sergeant slams the rear door in Little Bear's face. Interior Sarah Elliott's house night. Sarah, Michael, and Rafferty are preparing dinner. Michael standing on a chair in front of the stove, stirring a boiling pot of spaghetti. Rafferty is chopping garlic with a wicked-looking kitchen knife. Michael gives him an uneasy look.
How's the garlic coming?
Rafferty doesn't even look up, just keeps chopping away. Sarah gives him a confused look.
Low. Earth to planet Dale.
He stops and looks at her, still holding the knife. She grabs a handful of the diced garlic.
You feeling all right? You seem a little out of it. I'm fine. Just had a long day.
He goes back to his chopping. Sarah checks on the pasta and gives Michael a kiss on the cheek.
This is fun, isn't it?
He nods and smiles, kissing her back. He glances over at Rafferty and sees him cut his finger with a knife. Blood oozes from the wound, but Rafferty doesn't even flinch. Michael cringes. Rafferty puts the bloody finger in his mouth, then turns to see Michael watching him, wide-eyed. Michael quickly looks away. Sarah misses the whole exchange.
We can fix dinner like this, anytime you want. It's what families do.
She smiles at Michael cryptically. He gives her a curious look. Rafferty pauses and turns to her.
Maybe we shouldn't do this tonight. No, I want to. I'm gonna get nervous if we wait. Dale and I have something important to tell you. We've talked it over, and we think the three of us would make a good family. We want to get married.
A beat. Michael blinks at her in disbelief. Rafferty eyes him warily. Michael glances at him, then back at Sarah.
Where's he gonna live?
Well, here, with us. He's gonna be your new dad.
Wrong thing to say. Michael gives her a helpless look, then sets his spoon aside and gets down from the chair.
Where are you going?
I don't want to help anymore.
Michael hurries out of the kitchen and runs upstairs. Sarah starts to follow him, shouting from the foot of the stairs.
Michael! Michael! Stop it, Michael!
The door slams off screen. Sarah sighs heavily and turns to Rafferty.
I'm sorry, this is not how I wanted this to be. I'll get him back down here.
Rafferty puts his hand on her arm and stops her.
Let him calm down for a little bit. Then I'll go up there and have a talk with him.
Exterior, Atomic Bar and Grill, night. The Gone Fishin' sign still hangs in the door. Inside Brenner's car, Gates is feverishly working, using the pull tab from the soda can to unscrew the plate on the floor that he's chained to. The last screw pops loose. Gates quickly looks around, still no sign of Brenner. The street's empty too. He raises his shackled feet and starts kicking one of the rear windows. Smash! The window shatters and Gates quickly wriggles out of the car. The door of the diner opens a crack. Camera pans up from a pair of cowboy boots. It's Brenner, pants torn and shirt missing, his fat guts spilling over his belt. He's covered in blood. He sees Gates break the driver's side window of the car with his elbow. Gates climbs through the smashed window and is reaching for the pump-action shotgun in the front seat when he looks up to see the front door of the diner fly open and Brenner comes striding towards him like a fat, angry, blood-splattered juggernaut. Brenner reaches out for him. Gates yanks the shotgun out so quickly that he trips on his shackles and falls on his back. Brenner is practically on top of him when Gates whips the shotgun up, pumps it in the same motion, and shoots him in the chest. Gates hurriedly gets to his feet, gaping in shock at Brenner's shirtless and bloody body. He sees an old Volkswagen bus parked nearby and hobbles towards it. Then he hears a sound that stops him in his tracks, a low, gurgling growl coming behind him. Gates slowly looks back and sees Brenner's gut moving around like something spiny and unpleasant is trying to get out. Gates frantically climbs inside the VW and starts hot-wiring it. Long, thin tendrils crawl out of Brenner's gunshot wound and a high-pitched chirping fills the air. As Gates watches in horror, Brenner stands up and starts walking towards him, eyes rolled back, spaghetti noodle tendrils flapping from the hole in his chest. Gates shoots at him from inside the bus, blowing out the side window. Brenner takes 2 hits but keeps coming. Astonished, Gates takes aim at Brenner's car and shoots its fuel tank. Falloon! The car explodes and Brenner is engulfed in a ball of flame, shrieking as it burns. Gates gets the VW engine started, stomps on the gas, and drives off. Luis and Shiner emerge from the diner, their clothes torn and bloodstained. They look at Brenner's burning corpse, then watch Gates disappear. In a cloud of dust, their eyes strangely vacant. Interior Michael's bedroom night. Michael glumly plays with a couple of old action figures. He looks up when he hears footsteps on the creaky stairs. Interior Sarah Elliott's house upstairs hall night. Camera follows Rafferty's work boots as he tops the stairs and starts walking down the hall towards the closed door of Michael's bedroom. Michael listens to Rafferty's footsteps approaching, sees his shadow on the floor under the crack in the door. Rafferty stops in front of Michael's door and knocks.
You in there, Scout? Talking to you.
Yes.
Rafferty turns the doorknob. It's locked.
Why don't you open up this door? We can sit down man to man.
I don't want to.
Let me in. Just want to talk.
Talk.
Not like this. I can't see you, son.
I'm not your son. You're not really my dad.
Could be. I can be a lot of things if you let me. You want to see something cool?
Michael looks up, his interest piqued in spite of himself.
What is it?
Brought something. It's a surprise.
Why can't you tell me?
I want to show it to you. Come on, open the door so you and I can be friends. Just let me in for a minute. Don't you want to see what I got?
Michael considers it, then gets up from the bed and walks slowly to the door. He stops in front of it. Rafferty ominously waits in the hall. Michael reaches for the knob. A beat. Just as Michael's about to open the door, Rafferty gives a frustrated sigh and turns away.
Well, maybe later.
Michael takes his hand from the doorknob. He watches the shadow on the floor disappear and listens to Rafferty's heavy footsteps slowly walking away back down the hall. Exterior abandoned military base night. The place is alive with flashing lights and activity. Humvees, Jeeps, military police vehicles, unmarked government cars, vans, and ambulances are all parked on the tarmac. Soldiers, FBI agents, and SWAT teams stand at the ready as Lukanov's jet taxis towards them, tracked by huge spotlights. Sharpshooters atop a nearby hangar aim their sniper rifles at a plane. Wow, I totally just lost my spot. And there are snipers. Oh, yeah, the plane as it approaches and rolls to a stop. Blackburn watches from behind the perimeter as the hatch swings down and the two FSB agents step out with their hands in the air, followed by the pilot and the co-pilot. A flurry of FBI agents run towards the plane and hurry them out of the way. At last, a haggard and weary figure appears in the hatchway, Lukanov. For a moment, nobody moves. He squints in the glare of the light, looks out at all the guns pointed at him, then slowly raises his hands behind his head and steps down to the tarmac. The soldiers rush in, M16s raised. They quickly pat him down while the SWAT team storms the plane. As he's being frisked, Lukanov spots Blackburn and gives her an enigmatic smile. Interior Sarah Elliott's house night. Rafferty comes down the stairs and walks to the dining room where Sarah is setting the table. Her back is to him at first, and he just stands there looking at her, quietly watching. When she turns and is visibly startled when she sees him.
You scared me. Sorry. No dice, huh? He doesn't like me very much, does he? I overheard you guys talking when I was out on the porch.
Behind them, Michael appears on the stairwell, peering at them from underneath the banister. Sarah and Rafferty don't notice him.
Get over it. Families push each other's buttons, right? This just proves we're a family.
She shrugs, trying to make light of it, but is still clearly upset. She turns away and watches, and he just watches her again for a beat. Then,
I was trying to show him something. Maybe you'd like to see it instead.
Sarah smiles and eyes him curiously. Michael carefully sneaks down the stairs and peeks around the corner for a better look.
Why don't you come over here for a second?
Sarah sets the dishes down and turns towards him.
Closer.
She gives him a wry grin and then walks over to stand in front of him. He's suddenly sweating again. A beat.
Close your eyes.
She does. Rafferty looks down at her. Michael anxiously watches. At last, Rafferty takes her hand, drops to one knee, and slips a ring on her finger. Sarah gasps and opens her eyes and looks at it. It's a simple ring with a modest stone, but Sarah doesn't seem to mind. She gives Rafferty a happy smile, and his voice trembles.
Sarah Ann, will you marry me?
A beat. Suddenly, the skin of Sarah's ring finger peels back and a barbed tendril shoots out of it, stabbing him in the chest. Rafferty gasps in pain and surprise. Michael's eyes go wide as his mouth opens in a silent scream. More tendrils come whipping out of Sarah, plunging into Rafferty like he was a telephone switchboard. Sarah glares at him, her eyes bulging until they pop out of their sockets, rising on weird snail-like stalks. Her jaw drops until it hangs down to her chest. She then leans over and starts swallowing Rafferty whole like a boa constrictor. Her whole body distends as it slowly engulfs him. Rafferty's muffled screams can be heard from inside of her. Michael watches in paralyzed horror. Soon there's no trace of Sarah left, just a raw, bulging mishmash of flesh and torn clothes. Rafferty's screams fall silent. Michael looks down, suddenly aware that he's pissed himself. There's a dark stain running down one leg of his jeans. The Sara-Thing pauses. From the quivering pink mass, something not unlike a coyote snout pokes up into the air and sniffs. The Sara-Thing slowly turns towards Michael. Michael ducks behind a corner. The front door is directly across from him, but he'd have to run past the dining room to get to it. Michael takes a deep breath and makes a break for it. Suddenly, the Sara-Thing is right in front of him, shrieking from one of a half-dozen mouths and flailing its limbs. Michael screams and runs upstairs, a spray of weird fluid from the Sara-Thing splattering the steps behind him. Long, spindly appendages sprout from the Sara-Thing, making it look like a giant daddy longlegs. It crawls up the stairwell, walking the walls, pulling itself along the ceiling. Michael sees it turn down the hallway after him, and he dashes into his bedroom. Interior Michael's bedroom. Michael slams the door and locks it, then jumps into bed and pulls the sheets up to his chin. He stares at the gap beneath the door, heart hammering. For a long moment, nothing. Then, a shadow. An eyeball at the end of a long tentacle crawls under the door and looks around. Michael pulls the sheets higher. Then he spots something. A baseball bat. Michael springs out of bed and smashes the eyeball with the bat. Squash. The Sara-Thing screams and pounds against the door. Wham. The door buckles. Only one way out, the window. There's a short drop to the roof in the first story, then a longer drop to the ground. Michael throws the window open and starts crawling out. Suddenly, the door explodes and the Sara-Thing rushes through. Michael pushes himself out of the window just as it swipes at him with a crab-like pincer, knocking a table lamp to the floor. Exterior Sarah Elliott's house. Michael rolls across the roof, but he's come out of the window with too much momentum and he can't stop himself. He grabs the gutter, but it rips loose and Michael goes flying over the edge. He hits the ground hard and cries out in pain. For a moment, he just lies there, clutching at his arm and crying helplessly. Then he hears a voice coming from his room. It's his mom.
Michael, are you all right? Honey, I am sorry I scared you. Did you hurt yourself? Everything's okay, baby.
Interior Michael's bedroom. The thing lies out of sight, a mass of spider legs, sharp claws, and one malformed human mouth that speaks in Sarah's voice.
Please, Michael, come inside. Let Mama kiss it and make it better.
Exterior Sarah Elliott's house night. Michael looks up at his window and sees the beastly shadows being cast on the ceiling by the fallen lamp. He quickly gets to his feet and limps away. The Sara-Thing howls.
Oh!
Fade to black. End of Act 6. Act 7, fade in, exterior Mighty Mart night. Smoke pours out of the smoldering wreck of Brenner's car. Bob is on hand, putting out the last of the flames with a fire extinguisher. Half a dozen gawkers stand on the street watching. Louise and Shiner stand on the steps of the diner in their torn, bloody clothes, acting like their old selves. Maureen, the woman from the fire department, checks them over with a first aid kit. Sheriff Hayes drives up in his patrol car and gets out.
Holy cow! What in blue blazes happened here?
Louise says the U.S. Marshal was passing through here with a prisoner and got stopped by the roadblocks. Prisoner escaped, beat the hell out of Louise and Shiner, killed the marshal, and blew up his car.
Hayes looks at Bob as if he's just spoken to him in Chinese.
What? For real?
Hayes spots Brenner's burnt remains in the wreckage. The body's clearly deformed, the fingers too long, the chest blown out, the skull caved in the middle as if melting or splitting in two.
That a real miss or what?
Behind them, a few blocks away, Michael hobbles into the street, still holding his arm. He pauses to catch his breath, looks back to make sure he's not being followed, then sees the people gathering near the atomic. He hurries towards them. Everyone turns as he approaches, shocked at the sight of this dirty, crying kid running down the middle of the street.
God, now what?
Hey, I think that's my sister-in-law's kid. Michael!
Bob rushes out to meet him and takes him into his arms. Michael can barely talk. He's practically hyperventilating.
What's the matter? You okay? Where's your mom? Mommy? You want your mom? Okay, it's all right. We'll get you home. No, she's a monster. She's what? She's a monster. She turned into a monster and she killed Dale and then she chased me. Whoa. Her boyfriend, Dale. Is that who you mean? Dale's dead?
Michael frantically nods his head, surprised looks all around. Bob notices that Michael is painfully holding his arm.
Let me see that.
Carefully examines it and gives Hayes a surprised look.
I think it's broken.
Go ahead and take him on back to your place. Give Dr. Brand a call. I'll wrap things up here and then check on his mom. Okay, folks, go on home. Curfew's still in effect. So let's move it.
The Gawkers reluctantly leave. Bob carries Michael to his truck and drives off. Sheriff Hayes turns to Luis and Shiner.
You boys all right?
Well, shook up.
Yeah, a little shook up.
Exterior, desert night. A Black Hawk helicopter rolls over the eerie moonlit landscape. Interior, Black Hawk helicopter night. Lukanov sits next to Blackburn. He looks out the window at the desert passing by below, reminiscent of his first scene in the Russian helicopter flying over the ice. He turns to Blackburn.
This could have gone badly if I hadn't found a friend of this on this end. Thank you for your trust.
I wouldn't call it trust exactly.
Close enough for government work.
So we're friends?
Blackburn shoots him a hard look. A beat.
Do you know where my husband is, Doctor? He's a Marine colonel in Iraq. Most people I know who've got somebody over there, they're worried about them getting blown up or shot. But I work with disease. That's what I know. That's what I worry about. So what keeps me up at nights is thinking about some nut over there stumbling onto a stash full of Soviet bioweapons. I worry about my husband waking up in an invisible, odorless cloud of anthrax. It's probably got your signature on it.
And all those missiles of your country and pointing at us in these days, they were filled with what? Kittens and cabbage and patched up. Yeah. So rewind. All those missiles your country had pointing at us in those days, they were filled with what? Kittens and Cabbage Patch dolls?
You call yourself a doctor. I've committed my life to eradicating disease. You've spent yours creating them.
To defend my country. I'm not a monster. I'm a patriot. I did what was expected of me.
And that's fine, Doctor, except when that little glass test tubes filled with your patriotism goes missing and turn up in the hands of terrorists. We need to know what you know, but that doesn't make us colleagues. It sure as hell doesn't make us friends.
He angrily turns away. Lukanov turns back to the window. Exterior, Christmas, street, night. A Humvee pulls up next to the welcome sign. The rear door opens, and Little Bear steps out, rubbing his wrists. The door slams shut, and the Humvee takes off, leaving Little Bear alone. He brushes himself off and starts walking. The street is dark and silent. A woman peers out a window at him, but closes the drapes when he sees her. As he reaches the end of the street, a shadow darts across the street behind him. He turns, but there's nothing there. He peers suspiciously into the dark. Interior, Humvee, night. The sergeant in front of the Humvee passes a clipboard back to the other soldiers. Soldier number 1 looks at it and sees faxed photos of Hayes and the firefighters alongside their addresses.
We just dropped these dumbasses off. Now they want us to pick them up again.
It's the Army private. The job's so fun you do everything twice.
Interior, Mighty Mart apartment, Mighty Mart night. Michael sits at the kitchen table in shock, drinking a glass of milk. His arm is in a sling. Bob is on the phone, but but it just rings and rings. Samantha hands anxiously at his side.
Not answering.
She's probably out looking for him.
Michael's eyes go wide when he hears this. While Samantha and Bob argue, Michael gets up from the table and looks out the window. There's nobody there. Goes to another window. Nothing.
Well, she better not show up here.
The hell does that mean?
It means her son's running around by himself after 9 o'clock with a broken arm. If you think your flaky sister's not going to hear about it from me, you better think again.
Michael hurries into the store and looks out another window. This time he sees something. A dark figure a few blocks away, hunched over, darting between some bushes. Michael gasps and cups a hand to the glass. There's another shadow, closer this time. Michael locks the door, grabs a stool from behind the counter, and drops it onto the doorknob. He looks out of the window again, and Sarah's standing right there. She's changed clothes and seems to be back to normal. She smiles and taps the glass with her fingernails. Bob and Samantha haven't noticed. Bob puts on a coat and grabs his keys.
You don't even know what happened. Where are you going?
Boy needs a doctor, Sam. Dr. Brandt's apparently vanished from the face of the earth, so I'm taking him to the Rapid Care in Hooks Crossing.
What about the What about the roadblock?
Damn arm's broke. If they don't let me through, then one of the army medics will have to treat him.
Bob goes into the store and Samantha follows him. Michael is barricading the front door with chairs and product displays.
Michael, what are you doing?
She's here. She's here. Don't let her in. Don't let her in, please.
Just then, a knock at the door. Samantha and Bob exchange a look. Michael practically screams and hides behind them.
Hello? Michael? Come on, let me in. Do you have any idea how worried I've been about you? Open the door, baby.
Oh, I'll open the door. No!
Bob angrily starts moving the barricade aside. Michael tries to stop him, crying and hitting him until Samantha pulls him away.
Well, what has gotten into you?
Bob clears away the barricade and unlocks the door. Michael pulls away from Samantha and runs to hide. Bob opens the door. Exterior, Milligan's residence, night. 2 Humvees are parked in front of the house. Soldiers flank the walk and the sergeant knocks at the door. Billy, the young fireman, answers it. He gives the 2 soldiers a dismayed look.
William Milligan?
Yeah?
I'm afraid we need to take you back to the lab for some more tests.
Oh, come on.
Do you have family living with you?
Yeah, my wife and daughter, but look.
They need to come with us too.
Off of Billy's stunned look. Interior, Mighty Mart apartment, night. Sarah sits at the coffee table. Samantha pours her a cup of coffee. Bob eyes Sarah suspiciously. Michael watches them all from behind a chair in the other room.
Dale was over tonight and I thought Michael was asleep, but he wasn't. We left the bedroom door unlocked and Michael walked in while we were...
She shrugs. Bob glances at Samantha, who shifts uncomfortably.
Got scared when he saw us and ran off.
Michael thought you were killing me.
Dale thought I was too.
You think that's funny, do you? You have any idea what you put that boy through tonight? He's afraid of his own mother.
Don't worry about him. We'll have a talk. He'll come around.
She eyes Michael in the next room. He cowers behind the chair. Interior, Milligan residence, night. Billy leads the army sergeant into his house. The other soldiers follow him in the hallway. Look, man, like they said I was okay. We're all fine here. We're
really just fine.
I'm sure you are, sir. You still need to come with us.
Billy enters the living room where his wife sits in a high-backed chair watching TV. All we can see is the top of her head. Honey, you're not going to believe this. The woman in the chair doesn't move or speak. Honey? He steps closer, then recoils in horror. Camera moves up from the woman's feet. She's dripping with slime and wrapped in slowly moving tendrils. It's Paulette Milligan, who we last saw talking to Ginnie in the kitchen earlier today. As Billy and the soldiers gape at the sight, little Ginny walks around the corner behind them wearing a nightgown and staring vacantly. She's holding a teddy bear. She opens her mouth and an unearthly howl comes out. The soldiers spin around towards her in shock. Interior Mighty Mart, night. Sarah is still sitting at the kitchen table. Bob is skeptical.
So how'd he break his arm?
I don't know. This is the first I've heard of it. Maybe he fell when he...
Suddenly, from outside, machine gun fire.
It's right next door.
They hurry to the window. They hear more gunfire, and the windows of the Milligans' place across the way light up with a muzzle flash.
Is this whole town gone crazy?
Michael peeks out from behind the chair at all the commotion. Bob grabs a shotgun from the gun cabinet and starts loading it.
You are not going out there.
Hell, I'm not. Call Sheriff Hayes. He's probably still over at the Atomic.
Sarah stares at the window. Soon the gunshots stop, and a strange howl fills the night. Sarah listens, transfixed. Exterior Christmas night. The unearthly, discordant wail echoes through the town and is answered by another howl, then another. Exterior, Jamie's house night. Jamie opens the front door and steps outside, followed by his wife, Wendy, 30s. They stand on the stoop, transfixed by the bizarre and frightening cacophony. Jamie looks next door and sees Harold on the porch. They exchange an incredulous look. Exterior Mighty Mart night. Little Bear stops in the street and listens to the blood-chilling howls. They seem to be coming from all around him. Exterior Atomic Bar and Grill night. Hayes hears it too. He turns and with a look of slack-jawed dismay and bewilderment, Louise and Shiner exchange a look. Interior Mighty Mart. Bob stands frozen by the door, holding his shotgun. He and Samantha listen to the howling outside. Then another howl rises from the kitchen. It's Sarah. She slowly turns towards them.
Sarah?
Sarah's skin peels back like a banana. A dozen skinny tentacles unravel and start whirling like bullwhips. Sarah's head rises on a long snake-like neck, then splits apart right down the middle of her face, opening into something like the maw of a Venus flytrap. Jutting from the writhing torso is a roughly human face and the skinless head of a coyote. And at the end of each tentacle is what looks like a squawking chicken head. All of this stops her atop her unchanged human legs, which start walking. Samantha runs to the living room to get Michael. Bob races the shotgun, but the Sara-Thing swats him aside. He drops the shotgun, dazed. Samantha picks up Michael and tries to run, but the Sara-Thing blocks her path. Suddenly, someone grabs the shotgun. It's Little Bear. He pumps it, ka-check, and turns and peers around the corner. Samantha and Michael are cowering from the approaching Sara-Thing. Little Bear notices its still human legs and shoots out its kneecap. It tumbles over and writhes on the floor, shrieking.
Come on.
Sarah hurries back past the injured Sara-Thing, carrying Michael. Little Bear pumps shells into it until she's clear. Then they all run into the shop, darting between the shelves of food. A roar fills the room. Little Bear looks back and sees the shelves tipping over like dominoes behind them.
Go.
They run down the aisle, but the falling shelves cut them off from the door. They double back, the unseeing thing blowing food off of the shelves as it closes in. They turn the corner to see a silver door at the small walk-in freezer. Little Bear throws it open. Everyone hurries inside, and Little Bear slams the freezer door shut just as the last shelf tips over and crashes against the door. Exterior Mobile Lab night. The Black Hawk helicopter carrying Lukanov and Blackburn sets down. They emerge wearing hazmat suits. Interior Mobile Lab corridor night. Weber leads Blackburn and Lukanov through the stainless steel hallways. Lukanov is quickly reading a file as he walks. Prichard sees them pass by and hurries to catch up with them.
You want to take a look at the body we found?
You haven't destroyed it?
There's been a question about what we can do without permission from the victims' families.
The hell with what they want. I was very specific. You burn everything, there must be nothing left.
Prichard pushes his way forward and stops them.
Nobody's burning anything. You want to tell me what the hell you're doing here? I didn't clear you and I didn't even know who this guy is.
You're the expert the Russians sent to help us, and I don't need your clearance. I've just been put in charge of this mess.
Oh, really? On whose authority?
Fine.
Prichard turns and sees Secretary Avery walking down the corridor towards them. Prichard gives him a surprised look. Avery just scowls as he passes him by, following the others. Interior Mighty Mart freezer. The door to the freezer is jammed shut with a piece of metal shelving. There's a large humming fan in the ceiling, and Little Bear is removing the screws around it with a pocket knife. Bob holds up a cigarette lighter so he can see in the dim light. Samantha and Michael huddle together for warmth in the corner.
Is Mommy dead?
Of course not, sweetie. That wasn't really her. We'll find your mommy.
Little Bear and Bob overhear this. They keep their voices low so Michael doesn't hear them.
Sure looked like her to me, but no way that thing was human. Had to have been, I don't know, some kind of animal.
Or a bit of both. I saw something kill a coyote this morning. When it walked away, it was wearing the coyote's skin. Then it got to Lewis's chickens. Now the boy's mom. Whatever it is, it's spreading.
Bob is about to answer when the light goes out and the humming fan unit falls silent. They exchange a troubled look. A beat.
Hours now.
Exterior Mighty Mart night. The condenser unit atop the freezer lurches as Little Bear pushes it aside with a heave. He crawls up to the ceiling, then reaches in and pulls Bob out. As Bob helps the others up, Little Bear stands and looks around. The entire town is dark. And at first, it seems eerily quiet. Then the silence is broken by the sounds of violence. Angry, frightened voices shouting in the night. Somewhere, a window shatters, then a gunshot. Michael hugs Samantha's leg. Little Bear checks the load of the shotgun and hands it to Bob.
You're going to need this
Where are you going?
to kill that coyote.
Helps to turn on the button. Well, what are we supposed to do?
Little Bear jumps down from atop the freezer and looks at her.
Aide.
Interior mobile lab conference room night. Blackburn, Avery, Prichard, General Wise, Weber, and his assistant Sommers are seated at the conference table. 2 soldiers guard the door. One of them has a flamethrower. Lukanov is drawing Avery's blood. Avery doesn't look too happy about it. Lukanov empties the blood into a petri dish marked Avery. 6 other marked dishes already have blood in them.
The good news, the only good news, is that you can test for the infection relatively easy, though not without some risk.
He places 2 blood-filled dishes marked Lukanov and Blackburn next to Avery's, then lights a Bunsen burner and heats the end of an unraveled wire coat hanger towards it.
The 3 of us have not been out of the other site since we landed, but I do this as a show of good faith.
Prichard eyes him skeptically. Lukanov dips the hot wire into the dish with his name on it. The blood sizzles as it burns, but nothing happens. The others exchange a puzzled look. Lukanov heats the wire again and dips it into the next dish, Avery. The blood sizzles, no reaction.
Negative. He is not infected.
That's it? This is the whole test, so how do you know when it's positive?
Trust me. You'll know.
He moves on to the dish marked Blackburn. Nothing.
We're clean. Now the 4 of you.
There are 4 blood-filled dishes left. Prichard, Wise, Sommers, and Weber. First up, Wise.
This doesn't prove jack. You may as well be reading our palms.
Just give him a chance.
Now Sommers. Then Weber. Negative.
We've got $600 million in state-of-the-art lab equipment here, and you're going with Coat Hanger Man?
Can it, Roger?
Last one. Prichard. Lukanov hesitates, glances over at him. Nothing. Lukanov smiles.
Very good. We may begin.
Exterior Antarctica aerial shot, day, flashback. Camera flies over an endless expanse of snow and ice.
With every human generation, the possibility of an extinction event becomes more likely. It is inevitable, yet we remain unprepared for it, like one's own death. Its very inevitability makes it incomprehensible.
Interior Soviet-based radio room, night, flashback. A radio operator listens to a message crackling over his headset.
23 years ago, a Soviet research station in Antarctica picked up a radio distress call.
The voice is garbled, but we still recognize it. It's Windows, the radio operator from the first movie.
The first winter storm, I'm so sorry. U.S. Can we pause for just a second? US number 31 calling. McMurdo, urgent. Come in. Over.
The Russian radio operator hastily starts taking notes.
The first winter storm had just begun, and the Soviet base was unable to respond to the message or call for assistance. By the time the storm cleared, it was already too late.
Interior mobile lab conference room night. Camera slowly moves in on Lukanov as he addresses everyone.
The Russian flew out to the American base and found it completely destroyed, but amidst the wreckings, they've found a map with 2 locations marked on it. The first turned out to be a Norwegian outpost, also destroyed. The second, when they reached the second location.
Exterior Antarctica crater base day, flashback. And now it's 23 years ago. Lukanov stands at the edge of the crater with his wife, Alina, and Vigovsky, his assistant, looking down at the stunning sight of the snow-covered flying saucer.
That's when they called me.
Fade to black. End of Act 7. Act 8. Fade in. Exterior Antarctica crater base day, flashback. We've seen this before. Lukanov and the others in their moonsuit gear walking across the spaceship, escorted by the commandos.
It had been buried in the ice for 100,000 years before the Norwegians discovered it. 100,000 years. While humans were just starting to walk erect, the seed of our own extinction had already been sown here in the frozen waste, patiently waiting to germinate.
The commandos rappel down the ship through the open hatch. Lukanov and the others look down but only see darkness. Interior spaceship day. Lukanov climbs down the rope, followed by Alina and Vigovsky. They turn on their flashlights. The walls are so thick with ice that it looks more like a cave than the inside of a spaceship.
We were there to assess the danger of contamination from extraterrestrial microbes, alien disease which might pose a threat to life on Earth.
Vigovsky turns and almost runs into one of the black-clad commandos. Vigovsky gives a startled gasp, and Alina smiles.
The Zhukov commandos were there to assess the threat of larger life forms that may have survived in the ice.
The commandos escort them down a corridor. It's a frozen ghost ship, dark and haunted, lit only by the flashlights and the light mounted on Vigovsky's camcorder. Alina tests the air with a handheld sampling equipment. Vigovsky videotapes everything. Handheld camcorder POV. They all duck under a collapsed bulkhead. The corridor is there and scorched and pitted. Lukanov shines his flashlight on the wall. There are long scratches in the metal. They look like claw marks. Back to scene. Ahead of them, the commandos stop and shine their gun lights at something on the ground. Lukanov and the others crowd around it.
Is that what I think it is?
At first, it seems like just another pile of snow-covered wreckage, but as the camera moves over it, we see a strange crab-like limb and a huge insectoid head. It's an alien corpse. All that's left is a hollow, desiccated exoskeleton, withered and decomposed. Alina pulls out a camera and snaps a picture of it. When the flash goes off, Lukanov notices something. He shines his own light on it. There's a wedge-shaped chunk missing from the alien's skull, like someone, or something, split it open. Interior spaceship day. There's an open hatch up ahead. The deck in the front of it is strewn with debris. The commandos carefully pick their way around it. Alina taps Lukanov on the shoulder and points to the hatch. It appears to have been torn off its hinges.
It was barricaded on the side. Something broke through there.
They follow the commandos inside and find an 8-foot-tall transparent chamber like a giant test tube surrounded by alien equipment. There's a gaping hole in the chamber. Its walls are 8 inches thick, but something smashed its way right through.
Whatever destroyed the Americans and Norwegian outposts also destroyed this ship.
That's why it crashed.
Dr. Lukanov.
Vigovsky kneels by the door. He shines his flashlight on a dark stain on the deck, like something wet splattered here and froze.
Looks like blood.
Lukanov and Alina exchange look. Lukanov opens his specimen kit and carefully scrapes up a bit of the frozen blood with a scalpel. He puts in the test tube and holds it up to look at. A few innocuous red crystals glistening at the bottom of a test tube. Exterior Renaissance Island aerial shot night. Camera flies over the surface of a moonlit lake.
The spacecraft was sterilized and taken in pieces to a laboratory in Siberia. We took the organic samples we found back with us to the Renaissance Island biological test facility.
Camera tilts up to reveal a dark island dominated by an old factory complex. Smokestacks spew waste into the air. The entire facility is surrounded by a chain-link fence and guard towers. Interior Renaissance Island night. Camera slowly moves through the dank corridor. The place looks like an old boiler room full of exposed pipes and huge metal tanks. A constant low rumbling throbs through the concrete walls, and the hallways echo with the shrieks of terrified monkeys. Interior Renaissance Island necropsy room. Macready's body is laid on the autopsy table. A Y-shaped incision in his torso has been stitched shut. Lukanov covers him with a sheet. There is another sheet-covered body on the table next to him. Vigovsky enters with some papers and a clipboard.
Macready's blood alcohol level came back pretty high, but nothing unusual.
No psychological abnormalities, another one of them.
Suddenly, Alina's voice comes from an intercom in the hall.
Yuri, come in here.
Interior Renaissance Island. Micropsy lab. Night. Lukanov and Vigovsky hurry in. Alina stands over a microscope.
It's still alive. The alien blood sample. It's alive.
Lukanov stops and gives her a confused look. Alina moves aside and Lukanov steps up to look through the microscope. Insert Lukanov's POV through the microscope. The blood cells quiver and move around under the lens.
They had laid dormant for 100 millennia, resting in suspended animation under the ice. But once thawed, the cells had awakened and begun to function again.
Interior mobile lab conference room night. Lukanov still stands before the others at the conference table.
From notes left behind by the Norwegian and American scientists, we discovered that they had learned that only they were too late. That what we were looking at was actually a single-celled alien organism capable of imitating other living animal cells. Oh my God.
Imitating in what way?
In every way.
Interior Renaissance Island micropsy lab. Alina peers through the microscope. Lukanov is at her side.
It acts as a sort of parasite. It reproduces itself by latching onto a host cell and absorbing it, then creating what absorbs to be an exact replica of a host cell.
She steps aside and Lukanov has a look for himself. There's a strange group of living cells on the slide. Suddenly, one cell attacks another. Through a series of shots, the attacker cell seems to digest the other cell and then release it. Then both cells go back to attack more cells, and the process repeats.
The host itself is destroyed and replaced by the parasite in disguise, undetectable even under a microscope, and capable of imitating an entire complex organism, one cell at a time. We reported our findings to the superiors, and they ordered us to do what we always did in those days.
Interior Renaissance Island isolation room. Lukanov is wearing a pressurized hazmat suit. He's holding a white lab rat in one hand and injecting it with something.
Turn it into a weapon.
Interior Renaissance Island isolation room. The white rat runs aimlessly through a maze, hitting numerous dead ends before finding its way out. Lukanov and Alina watch through a glass divider. Using robotic arms, Alina skillfully picks the rat up and places it inside a plexiglass box.
We were in the business of creating germ warfare agents, but this was something altogether different. This was an intelligent disease.
Interior Renaissance Island isolation room. Alina is in the isolation room now, wearing a pressurized hazmat suit. She attaches a canister to a plexiglass box that the rat is in and presses a button. Gas hisses into the box from the canister. The rat twitches, then drops dead.
Was it something that could have been given an objective? Told who to infect and when? If so, it would be the world's first guided biological weapon.
He opens a box and draws the rat's blood. There's a cage next to it with a living rat in it. He picks this rat up and injects it with the first rat's blood.
A single cell was all that was needed to pass along the memory of an entire organism. In each generation, retain the memories of every generation preceding it.
Interior Renaissance Island isolation room. The second rat enters the maze. As Lukanov and Alina watch from outside, this rat runs straight through the maze without stopping.
If it could be trained, it could be controlled. So we thought.
Interior Renaissance Island library. Alina is going through materials savaged from Antarctica. Lukanov makes a move on a chessboard, listening as she reads aloud from a scorched notebook.
It could have imitated 1,000,000 life forms on 1,000,000 planets, could change to any one of them at any time. Now it wants life forms on Earth. It needs to be alone and in close proximity with the life form to be absorbed. The chameleon strikes in the dark.
Lukanov picks up a photograph of the team from the Carpenter movie posing in front of their helicopter. He gives it a solemn look. Interior Renaissance Island isolation room. Lukanov and Alina watch from outside as Vigovsky enters with a hazmat suit, carrying 3 labeled petri dishes. 2 of them contain blood. The third contains a dark amber fluid.
It was the Americans who, in their desperation, developed the test based on the theory that since each cell is a complete entity, any part separated from the organism becomes an organism in and of itself.
Vigovsky set the dishes on the table next to a robot arm and lights a Bunsen burner. The robot arm clutches the needle in its pincers. Interior Renaissance Island isolation room. Lukanov stands at a control panel with a pair of joysticks. Through the observation window, he can see the 3 petri dishes in the robot arm. Alina and Vigovsky stand next to him.
First child's.
He works the controls of the robot arm, holding the tip of the needle to the flame of the Bunsen burner. Then he drops the hot needle into the first dish. No response.
Independent and self-sufficient.
He heats the needle again, then moves on to the second dish.
Now Macready.
Nothing. Alina turns back to Lukanov.
Both human.
Lukanov heats the needle once more over the hissing flame.
With the instinct to protect itself.
Then holds it over the third dish.
Now the original blood sample we took from the spacecraft.
He sticks the needle into the amber fluid. Scream! A tiny tentacle lashes out from the dish and squirms away. Drops of alien blood frantically crawl out of the petri dish. Lukanov takes a key from his pocket and inserts it into a control panel next to a little red button. He turns the key, then flips up the button's clear plastic cover and presses it. Suddenly, jets of fire shoot out from nostrils in the ceiling of the isolation room, instantly turning it into a blast furnace and incinerating everything inside. Nothing can be seen through the observation window except for the roaring flames.
We watched it. We dissected it. We analyzed it. And then we did the one thing that those who deal in unknowns must never do.
Interior Renaissance Island isolation room. Alina enters in a hazmat suit carrying a plexiglass box with a live rat inside it. She grabs an air hose from the ceiling and attaches it to her suit. There's no one in the observation room.
We underestimated it.
Alina places the plexiglass box on the table, then turns to the intercom on the wall. She presses a button.
Gary?
Interior Renaissance Island library day. Lukanov answers on the intercom. Vigovsky is with him.
Yes. What is it?
Knight to e4.
A beat. Lukanov considers this, but doesn't look at the board.
Are you sure you want to take my queen?
Knight to e4.
He grumbles and turns the intercom off. Then he goes over to the chessboard and moves Alina's knight and removes his queen. Interior Renaissance Island isolation room day. Alina smiles and turns back around. The plexiglass box is empty.
Oh my god.
She steps back, eyes darting, but the rat is gone. She slowly searches the room, even looks up to the ceiling. Then she turns back and the camera moves to reveal the rat scurrying across her back. She can't feel it inside the pressurized hazmat gear. The rat climbs to her shoulder and chews a hole in her suit. Air starts hissing out and as an alarm goes off. The door starts to close automatically. Alina races towards it, but it's slammed shut just as she reaches it. Interior Renaissance Island library day. The alarm can be heard all over the facility. Lukanov and Vigovsky look up from their work and hurry off out of the room. Interior Renaissance Island isolation room day. Meanwhile, the rat has widened the hole in Alina's suit and crawls inside. She screams and whirls around, catching a glimpse of its pink tail disappearing through the hole. Lukanov and Vigovsky run into the observation room. Vigovsky looks at a flashing light on the control panel.
She's got a hole in her suit.
Elena!
Lukanov frantically pounds at the glass divider. She sees him, starts moving towards the intercom, then stops, swatting at a lump moving inside her suit. Lukanov turns to Vigovsky.
Open the door!
We can't, it's on fail-safe.
The lump in Alina's suit is getting bigger, and it's starting to make a strange, squishy noise. She staggers back, desperately trying to keep whatever it is from reaching her face.
Oh my god, get it out! Get it out! Get it out!
Through her visor, we see a fleshy tendril wrap around her head like a snake and try to force its way into her mouth. She turns away from it, screaming through clenched teeth.
No! Cut it open!
That door must be 6 inches thick.
Cut it open before I cut you open. Go!
Vigovsky runs off. As Lukanov watches helplessly, Alina falls to the ground and lies still, her hazmat suit bulging grotesquely as something wet writhes and wriggles underneath it. Interior Renaissance Island isolation room day. The alarm has stopped. A man with an acetylene torch is cutting through the thick steel of the isolation room door without much success. Lukanov and Vigovsky wait solemnly in the observation room. Lukanov's eyes never move from Alina's motionless body. Just then, a perfectly plain white lab rat crawls out through the hole in Alina's suit. And a moment later, Alina starts to move.
Elena?
Her back is to him as she stands up. She slowly turns around and walks over to the glass. She looks up and we see her face through the visor. She seemed a little confused, but otherwise normal. Lukanov and Vigovsky are weeping with relief.
Yuri? Oh, I'm so dizzy. What happened? Why is the door closed?
Lukanov's smile slowly fades as a sick realization sets in.
We'll get you out. Just patch your suit and we'll repressure you.
Vigovsky goes to the control panel, but Lukanov grabs his wrist.
It's not her.
Vigovsky looks at him like he's crazy, then it hits him too. For a moment, they just stare at each other, not sure what to do.
What's wrong?
Nothing,
Lukanov reaches into his pocket and pulls out a key that we saw before. Vigovsky gives him a stunned look.
The gun that he got. We watched her die. Don't make this harder than it has to be.
Lukanov turns back to the control panel. Alina sees the key. She looks at him in shock and horror.
No, Yuri, what are you thinking? It's me. I'm fine. Don't burn me, please. Let me out of here, Yuri, please. You're scaring me. Let me out, please. Yuri, I love you.
Tears roll down Lukanov's cheeks as he inserts the key into the control panel next to the red button. Alina turns to Vigovsky.
Fedyanka, don't let him do this.
Vigovsky hesitates. Lukanov flips up a plastic cover and is about to press the button, but Vigovsky stops him.
Wait. Ask her something only she would know. Whose turn is it?
What?
The game. Whose turn is it?
Oh, it's Yuri's turn. Unless Mutava was out, it's still Yuri's turn. I took his queen.
Vigovsky heaves a sigh of relief. Alina gives Lukanov a hopeful look. Lukanov puts his hand on the glass divider. A beat.
By my wife.
He presses the button. Whoosh! Jets of flame flood the room, consuming Alina in an instant. Vigovsky gapes at him, horrified.
How could you? She gave the right answer. Don't you realize what that means?
Yes. It was a perfect imitation.
An unearthly howl can be heard over the roar of the flames. Lukanov just watches the fire reflecting in his glasses. Interior mobile lab conference room night. A silent beat. Blackburn and the others are struck speechless.
I resigned my post and begged the army to destroy the organism. They stopped the experiments, but saved one vial of the live material in a vault on the Renaissance Island. There it sat until 72 hours ago, when Chechen rebels raided the abandoned lab and stole it, thinking it was smallpox.
Oh, this is crap. Are we actually going to believe this lunatic?
Why didn't your government tell us this in the first place?
They must have been protecting the spaceship. It's probably worth billions, right?
Assuming there is a spaceship.
Oh, there is. They've been trying to reverse engineer it for 20 years. They fear if its existence was revealed, the American and Norwegian governments would lay claim to it.
What do you have to back this up? Did you bring any of your research?
The army seized everything when I resigned. All I was able to save from them was this.
From inside his belt, he pulls a battered cigarette case. He opens it, revealing an audio cassette. He inserts it into a tape recorder, and Macready's voice comes from the speaker. It's the recording he made in Carpenter's movie. Yeah, I'm going to hide this tape when I'm finished. If none of us make it, at least there'll be some kind of record. Storm's been hitting us hard now for 48 hours. We still have nothing to go on. Interior mobile lab pathology laboratory night. A doctor pulls off a rubber glove and starts to walk over to a trash can. He steps on a lever that opens the lid, but the trash can stays shut. Confused, she pries the lid up to see what's jamming it. Someone's hazmat suit has been stuffed inside. One other thing. I think it rips through your clothes when it takes you over. Windows found some shredded long johns and the name tag was missing. So it could have been anybody's. The doctor puts on fresh gloves and pulls the hazmat suit out of the trash, revealing that it's been ripped full of holes. Interior mobile lab, conference room, night. Camera pans around the faces at the table, dissolving through a series of close-up shots as they all listen to the tape. Nobody trusts anybody now. And we're all very tired. Interior U.S. Station 4 night. Footage from the Carpenter movie. Macready sitting in the dark, speaking into the microphone of a tape recorder. Nothing else I can do. Just wait. R.J. Macready, helicopter pilot, U.S. Outpost number 31. Interior mobile lab conference room night. Click. Lukanov stops the tape recorder and looks at everyone.
All right, let's get down to brass tacks. How do we cure it?
You can't. If I understood Dr. Lukanov correctly, once someone has been infected, they're already dead. They're taken over.
You must kill them, completely burn the body so that every cell is destroyed.
Sounds like you'd be happy to just drop a nuke on the joint.
Wouldn't make me happy, Mr. Prichard. But if released unchecked in the general population, this thing will infect every last man, woman, and child on the planet in 2,700 hours. Just over 3 years. 3 chaotic and nightmarish years. So yes, if necessary, nuke the joint.
Exterior Little Bear's Ranch, night. A helicopter flies by overhead, sweeping the desert with its searchlight. When it passes, Little Bear peers out from the scrub brush he's been hiding in. He quickly climbs a fence, hurries back across the sheep pen, and ducks into the house through the back door. Interior Little Bear's house, night. Little Bear enters and hurriedly pulls a box out from under his bed. He opens it and grabs a pair of night vision goggles. Then he goes to a wooden chest and opens the lid. It's filled with keepsakes, mostly of his Navajo heritage. He pauses to look at a framed photo of himself from his younger days, wearing an Army Ranger uniform, in his arm around a beautiful Native American woman. He sets the picture aside, then reaches back into the chest and picks up something long and slender wrapped in a wool blanket. It's a black bow and a quiver of arrows. He gazes at them reverently for a moment, then slings them over his shoulder. There's a mirror in the lid of the chest, and something catches his eye in the reflection. He whirls and through the front window sees a VW bus parked out front. Before Little Bear can react, Gates emerges from the shadows and puts a shotgun to his head.
Drop it, Kimasabi. I got no problem putting a hole in you.
Little Bear reluctantly drops his bow and raises his hands. Exterior mobile lab night. A large ditch has been plowed into the nearby hillside by a bulldozer. Men in hazmat suits are tossing medical waste there, syringes, test tubes, rubber gloves, etc. 2 men carried the disfigured corpse on a stretcher and set it atop the pile. Then a soldier douses it all with gasoline. Another soldier appears with a flamethrower and hoses everything with fire. The grotesque faces of the corpse gape silently as they burn. Interior mobile lab conference room night. Lukanov is poring over a stack of files. He's listening to a recording of radio communications while he reads.
Negative, November 7-4. He's clean here. What's his story? Over.
We picked him up on foot, armed with rifles. Says he was hunting a werewolf or something. Over.
Lukanov looks up, curious, growing more alarmed as he listens.
Come again, November 7-4.
Yeah. What's this skinwalker look like again? Anything it wants to. It's a shapeshifter. Right now it's taken the shape of a coyote. But when it got caught in the electric fence over there, a man came out of it. You get that? Over?
Lukanov is stunned, horrified. He leaps from his chair and hurries out. Interior mobile lab ICU night. Blackburn and Weber look through the observation window at the ICU. The plane crash survivor is still unconscious. Sommers draws his blood. 2 armed soldiers stand by the door. Sommers gives the survivor's blood the hot needle test. Tss. He nods to the soldiers and they leave. Weber shakes his head.
We can keep sticking hot needles into blood samples until the moon turns to cheese. If they keep coming back negative, it doesn't prove anything.
You don't believe him?
Do you? He wants us to drop an atomic bomb, for Christ's sake. I'm sorry, I know it's your ass if he's lying.
It's all of our asses if he's telling the truth.
Sommers emerges from the ICU airlock and turns to face them.
Well, that's it. We've checked everybody we could possibly have been exposed. I'm just waiting on those first responders.
Why haven't you tested the first responders yet?
They're still not back.
What do you mean they're still not back? They should have been here hours ago.
Before Sommers can answer, Lukanov suddenly runs up to them in a near panic.
There's been an exposure. We need to find General Waz immediately.
On the other side of the glass, the only sound is the beeping of life support machines. Through the observation window, we see Lukanov and the others hurry away. So there's no one around when the survivor awakens with a gasp. Exterior highway night. A convoy of military vehicles tear asses down the dark highway. Exterior Christmas night. The convoy stops and soldiers in hazmat gear start piling out of the vehicles. Lukanov and Blackburn get out of the Humvee and stop in their tracks, gaping in horror.
We're too late.
The camera pans down to the welcome sign, then booms up to reveal the town of Christmas, or what's left of it. Windows are smashed, the power is out, buildings are burning unchecked, and there are dead bodies lying in the street. The town has been destroyed. Title, to be continued. Fade out, end of Act 8, the end. And that is the first half of this Wild Thing miniseries. Loving it so far. Cannot wait to see how it turns out. So come on back next week where we will do the Return of the Thing Part 2. Have yourselves a fantastic rest of your night, and thank you for watching.